Yeah, right now.
Hey, welcome. Esoteric Doooovidism here. I have Brundlefly with me. Hopefully, some of you saw my debate with JF on multiculturalism. Relatively, it's not my area of expertise, but it's what I've been discussing most since I've been on YouTube because I'm a multiculturalist. I believe in multiculturalism. I think it's directly affiliated with Judaism. But in terms of my study, like the debate on evolution, something that I've put lots of thought into and know a lot more about, or spiritual subjects. But I was happy to debate it. It's something I believe in. It was a good opportunity. And, I got Brundlefly here. I appreciate him. He's the one who, hooked me up and got me on the show. And like relatively, Luke Ford was the first one to bring me on and, so to say, recognize the little talent I had, bought me the microphone. But Brundle was the guy who came straight at me, and we debated tens of hours. And, so relatively, that was all preparation for tonight.
Yeah, man. I mean, as I told you last night, I mean, I've taken the JF side of that debate many times, and we obviously disagree on multiculturalism being good for the United States. But as I said, you're a friend of mine, and I wished you the best, and I thought you performed well. I mean, you were in front of a hostile audience. I think you made your points. I think viewership was higher than the evolution debate, and the money was definitely flowing in. So I'm sure, I don't know if JF had said something, but I'm sure he'll be having you back on.
Yeah, he likely maybe even next week, and we'll have to think about what's the most interesting topic and what I know most, or what his audience wants to hear. If they want to go in like JQ, and I don't know if JF is the person to argue like the JQ if he cares that much, or someone else, or if he'd want me to do a presentation, or maybe we could talk about the soul, where last time he argued the affirmative of evolution, I was just negative, and that this time I would do like an affirmative of the spiritual world, of the existence of the soul, or even the truth of the Bible.
Yeah, it's interesting. My takeaway, especially of this second stream, is how, I'm. This is why I think you'll probably be, maybe not weekly, but, or who knows, maybe weekly. But the two of you seem to be well suited, sort of sparring partners for each other. You guys pretty much disagree on everything. He's an atheist, race realist. I don't know if ethno-nationalist is the right word, but some sort of nationalist. Whereas you're a guy who believes in God and rejects evolution.
Our demeanor
and it's
and debate style is similar.
Yeah,
So I mean,
exactly.
relatively,
Right.
like, you're much more personal and much more like argumentative or emotional, and me and JF are both very unemotional and kind of like straight logic and like empirical methods.
Right, exactly. You guys are much. Your styles match up better. Yeah, no question. So I think it's interesting. I think it makes for a better show when there's a disagreement, almost like a crossfire type of thing, or a Handy and Combs, versus where JF brings somebody on to agree with him, or vice versa. He brings somebody on and JF agrees with them, kind of thing.
It was like I didn't end up doing the show last night, but the post analysis of the Halsey Etche debate, as opposed to like the Big Cat Kayla AC debate, where it's like you had a hard time figuring out where they disagreed, or like what even they sided on the issues. And this one was pretty clear. Like me and him were in direct opposition on these issues, and like every point that we took to argument, we were basically in disagreement on.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Yeah, man. I mean, the Eke versus Halsey debate it's interesting. It's it's an interesting point where you make that they're sort of debating against each other, yet there's like all this agreement, and they couldn't really come to terms or address where the disagreement lay. I thought, I don't know how you feel about it. I think
I analyzed it that they basically agreed, except what they agreed about, Eke was saying was ethnic nationalist, and Halsey was saying was civic nationalist. But basically, they were in agreement and the only thing they disagreed about was
Is
the
labels.
definition. Yeah, and
Yes.
there were a few minor disagreements about political structure. But I mean, basically, Halsey's in the camp of largely ethnic nationalism, and it was just like AC and Big Cat. Like he just wants the Jews included, and that the West should recognize that Jews are a valuable asset to the white populations, and that Israel is a valuable asset to U.S. foreign policy. But basically they're in the same camp, and at least Big Cat Kayla, you had an argument on and they hardly touched upon it. Like the JQ at least was like, well, I agree with you about everything except the same way you feel about all other minorities. That Big Cat also felt that way about Jews, as opposed to where Eke completely avoided the Jewish question, and he seemed even largely willing to accept Jews as white.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because it is kind of true that, knowing AC and Halsey's stance on third world immigration, and multiculturalism generally, they are almost like fair-skinned nationalists, as opposed to, or they're like white nationalists, for which
They
white
just
means
want Jews to be included in the white.
right.
But besides for
Yeah,
that, there's hardly any disagreement.
right.
And
Yeah.
historically, that's been the debate with on Almost Baked Alaska, Red Elephants, Andrew Jaworski. Almost all of the debates with Jews and the alt right have basically been the Jew who's just like, I just want to be part of the alt right, and that was the only agreement. Like, should you let Jews into the alt right? Yeah, as opposed to someone like honestly saying what everybody knows, that Frame Game has been saying is like, it's us doing it. Like, it's saying like we're the main factor pushing multiculturalism. There's a reason why Jews favor multiculturalism, and I'm gonna go to your home court and let you have the home court advantage because I'm so confident in my arguments that I'm willing to take my arguments to your arena.
Yeah. Another observation, there's a couple things. I talked to Luke briefly tonight on his show, and we touched on this. He said he had a similar observation about their lack of difference, or where they were sort of just arguing over the definition between civnat and ethno-nationalism. And because he asked them, like, basically their ideal society is something like an 18th century Europe. Halsey seeing it as a civic nationalist order, and Eke seen as an ethno-nationalist, and that both of their favorite philosophers are Jared Taylor. So it's like, wait, what's going on? Like, what is the argument here exactly?
I will prepare like an autistic stream. I'll have to find some good data to try to support my arguments. The data that shows that the benefits of multiculturalism, and I think
you're gonna be searching for a while.
No, I searched before the day. Like I didn't think it was. I didn't know if it was like Frame Game style, and he even showed the one thing that I shared on the McKinsey study. Pretty clearly shows that. I mean, for like a social science aspect, the statistical data that multiculturalism is better for business. There's studies about that within education. There's studies about that within really almost all factors within health outcomes. If you looked at like ethnic hospitals where everyone's the same race versus hospitals that have all different type peoples, took schools, the studies are pretty conclusive. The reason that multiculturalism is actually a better structure for society.
Yeah, it's
but
interesting.
It's a social science. We're talking, so it's not like evolution or like a physics equation where be like the data that we covered with immigration. Then you focus on, like, God forbid, like the blacks or the criminals or the Muslims. So we're arguing two different, the theoretical concept of multiculturalism, which means like the elite school, maybe like your wife, for example, where she's got like the kids of Indian and Chinese doctors together, versus when you're talking like bringing the third world into the country. And I argue both of those perspectives, that like two things to get ahead: you need the brain drain, you need the excellence, just the difference of opinion, in having diversity to produce more diverse opinions, and even on the negative aspect of taking in people that actually do detriment your society, that even there could be made arguments why that's best for us too.
Yeah, regarding that McKinsey study, I would have to take a look at it. Maybe you can send it to me after the show. I have a feeling, given who McKinsey's clients are and their sense of what business is, they're thinking mid to large corporations and what's good for them.
I think it's
And
universal. That's what my point
well,
about
so
multiculturalism in
there's
like the
something.
coup, the paradigm shift is that basically the larger Western world of universities and government function under the assumption that multiculturalism is true and better for society.
Right. So, Glib the Quip Medley pointed out one time that the reason that big business favors multiculturalism is because they have the resources to do micro targeting of different demographic groups, and which gives them a competitive advantage over smaller businesses.
There's probably a bunch of different reasons, but you want to pigeonhole it and say that that's the only factor that plays in.
No, it's
And
not the
clearly,
only.
there's
It's not the only factor, but the fact is there are reasons for which it could make sense that multiculturalism advantages large established businesses, creates barriers to entry for competitors, whether it's like coping with EEOC requirements and things like that. I mean, it's a fact that any kind of regulations, whether they be environmental, uh,
I just put the study in the chat. If people are noticing, the link is in the chat if anyone wants to see the McKinsey study.
yeah, but like whether it's environmental or like sort of human resources requirements, human resource related requirements that companies have to deal with, the more complicated and onerous the rules, the better off big businesses are to cope with them relative to their smaller competitors. So in a world where we see increasing concentration into fewer and fewer hands and more industries, I'm not surprised to see them push for policies that benefit them.
I was listening today these lectures from Scott Page, University of Michigan, who I have his great. My father has his great courses lecture on complexity, and I just ordered his book on diversity. But I mean, he's diversity studies department of Michigan, economics, mathematics, and he has a bunch of studies on these. And in terms of decision making, that there's been conclusive studies that show that diverse groups make better decisions than monolithic groups. I'm not sure if you've seen those studies.
Yeah, no, I mean, but like diverse
If
what? Like
makes
diverse.
sense that a group of 10 white people that are faced with complex issues and problem solving versus a multicultural group of different people, that the multicultural group will perform better in decision making.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sort of.
I'll plan on going through those studies, for the
Yeah,
people.
I think you should do that presentation at some point. I mean, I'm personally like pretty suspicious of social science studies
You got to
which
look at
are
your
not replicable.
look. I mean, I don't know where you want to dox yourself, but I'm saying just generically your university big business experience. And you presumably it was more multicultural, and you look back when you were in school and your lab groups and your study groups that if you perform better, and depends where you went to school, but like Ann Arbor University of Michigan is an extremely multicultural place, and the excellence usually in the chambers of excellence, like engineering conferences, anything where you have excellence, usually you have all different type peoples. I mean, usually you don't have excellence among a monolithic group.
Yeah, so what's interesting is, so I've worked in basically, I've worked in very like the largest accounting firm in the world, all the way down to like a smaller regional office. Even dabbled, like I know my father's also a CPA. He has a one-man shop, so I've seen all the way down to the bottom. Okay. And where I started out in my career was not the biggest firm, but like a international firm, like the fifth largest. Okay. And our office was like largely, I would say, 80 to 90% white. It leaned more male than female, but there was plenty of women. And there was definitely like a sense of social cohesion and like a culture, and people would hang out like after work and things like that. That was not present that when I went to work at the biggest firm in the world, where a lot of people were like H-1B visa types, like Chinese guys, a lot of Indians, where people like just sort of showed up to work. Like you could almost like tell the difference in like how their cubicles were adorned. You know what I mean? People just didn't. They went to work to do work, and that was it.
It was like the UN there almost.
Yeah, it was. It was like the UN, and
I mean, it's
you
even
know
more so
they're
than
the
like the
biggest.
UN
They're the biggest.
private
They're the
business.
biggest. But they're like the biggest in the world, sort of because of not because they were not multicultural when they rose to be the biggest firm in the world. Okay, like in essence, let me just explain public accounting. There are four firms: Deloitte, PwC, EY, which is Ernst and Young, and oh my God, Deloitte, KPMG is the fourth. Okay, and they both have like revenues on the order. Last time I checked, like of 50 billion a piece. Okay, and then there are three or four firms like in a second tier, which might have revenues on the order of like 2 billion a piece. Okay, but they're huge firms. I mean, they're international. They have tens of thousands of people working for them, but they are like orders of magnitude smaller than the big four. And so the big four, through being around and mergers and all that, have basically risen to a size where they're the only ones with enough manpower to sort of provide like government regulatory required audits of companies like Coca-Cola and Porsche and BMW, etc., the biggest companies in the world. So, and these big four, they're like, you can't actually, like, none of those smaller firms are ever going to rise to be as big as them. They sort of have guaranteed revenue streams because of the regulatory requirements on public companies. And so, they may be bigger and sort of more successful by that measure, but it's not because of like how they, like their company cultures, so to speak. And so I find like there's they have the luxury. They, in a sense, like they have the luxury of indulging in this alienating corporate culture of diversity, and nobody feels like a sense of camaraderie there. And I don't know.
Well, the McKinsey study mentions multiple factors that are part of that, and I like give an example. I remember in Manhattan, I walked into Scientology. I actually went there a few times, but the first time I went there, and that was actually during like the Tom Cruise psychology thing related to like Jakey Jake, and they were pushing that literature against psychology. And but instantly when I walked in, the person I was speaking to within a minute or two, because I was dressed Jewish, and they call over this girl, and they're like, she's also Jewish. It's like Scientology, like, look, like, we're a multicultural organization. Look, we have a Jew here. And instantly they introduced me to a Jewish Scientologist. And I mean, that's a common strategy in the business world. That's saying people feel more comfortable. Ethnocentrism, xenophobia are facts. I mean, there might be benefits to multiculturalism, but there's definitely data, and everyone knows that there's factual elements to ethnocentrism and xenophobia. So the simple element that you're more comfortable dealing with people that you're like, and could be translation and cultural issues. So the nature of global business, that you need people of all different races and ethnicities to reach into those markets. And even just here in America, if it's like the Mexican, the African American market, and even like the generic Republican Party strategy, where you're looking, you need to win over minorities to the Republican Party. That's the path to victory. And the way to do it is by having members of those groups that are going to be like Kaimi or whatever, that one guy, like one entertainer that, or person that says good things about Trump, could win over hundreds of thousands of African Americans. So in the business world, that will apply to clients, apply to sales, let alone the stuff I was mentioning, like the Scott Page studies of producing excellence, and that actually the workers might also perform better, besides for reaching new markets.
Okay, you know what? That is, I don't disagree with you at all. that
Even like Starbucks, when you walk into Starbucks, there's all different types of people working. There's always like, white and African American. Some places there's even like Islamic people wearing hijab working at Starbucks. And it's like everybody feels comfortable because like whoever you are, there's one of your people behind the counter.
I don't know if that's. I mean, I don't necessarily feel that way. I've been in plenty of Starbucks where, particularly in some urban environments, where I don't feel comfortable. I like. Where's my white face? Like, there's plenty of places where it's like they pride themselves on not having white faces to look back at me, but that's fine. But to your point,
you're saying in your local Starbucks there's 0 white people. Or you're saying just the fact that
it's a homosexual, like someone to make me feel uncomfortable in a different way.
That might be a certain element to it, but I mean also because that's general diversity today, where you have like a homosexual. Yeah, I mean, so Starbucks also has like homosexuals and people.
Well, that's the thing. I find,
but it's the element that you have your reciprocal on the other side of the counter. So there might be people on the other side of the counter like, oh man, I don't really like that person, but at least there's your reciprocal on the other side of the counter.
I don't consider. I mean, this is the thing about Starbucks. Like, I don't consider the white homosexuals.
I'm saying not all the white people who work. You do agree.
There's a lot. There's a lot
basically,
of basically,
but you will have a reciprocal.
Degenerates.
You will have a reciprocal on the other side of the counter.
Well,
you can have like a generic, like a clean-cut white person that's trying to pay their way through university that you could talk to and be friendly and kind of want them to succeed. In that each person, you will walk into Starbucks and
but I would expect them. I would honestly expect them to be working a more masculine job than making little, overpriced dessert drinks.
Maybe, but I'm saying that's the generic model that McKinsey's recognizing for the power of the study is that having a reciprocal on the other side of the counter is good for business, and that applies to anything, whether it's Ford Motor in the sales room for cars, and it's universal to all big business.
Hey, David.
Yeah. So just real quick before Levi jumps in, I want to say to your point about smoothing over international trade, I agree with you. I think that like I'm not like an absolute ethno-nationalist. I would say that as Luke Point described me, I think he used this term in the Eke versus Halsey debate, this idea of like the white majoritarian, where to me, like a country which is like 80% white, explicitly Christian and European, with a center of gravity there, like in that culture, in that identity, is good enough. Yeah. And it provides that there are like select minorities who maybe grease the wheels of international trade and things like that, but only in that situation. Like I think, Doooovid, one of the things about multiculturalism that sort of is a huge problem is the lack of assimilation. And I think lack of assimilation, because
that's my point of multiculturalism. Like assimilation fails because race realism, people are different. So you can't get people to assimilate to white culture because we're different. You could create civic nationalism is intrinsically multicultural because it's saying that there's a greater ideal, and I could be a Hasidic Jew and you could be a white nationalist, but we could do business and meet in the public square and agree about how we interact.
Well, I think you can assimilate. Like, here's the thing, like, we largely were able
over in detail with him.
Yeah, I know, but like we were largely
who you prefer as your neighbor.
But like Americans have largely been able to assimilate. I mean, it's not complete, but Irish and Italians, Russians, Eastern Orthodox and Catholics, which are not part of like the founding stock of the country, they sort of retain their own thing a little bit because they are divergent from the sort of the Northwestern European.
Hey,
but they came here at a time. They came here at a time where like assimilation was demanded. And I just think, like if you had and I know content watchers use this term as sort of center of gravity. I mean, what we have now is a complete lack of a center of gravity where people, while assimilation might be particularly hard for other cultures, we have not made it any easier by not asserting the requirement that people, if they're going to be here, if they want to be citizens, conform to our values.
Hey, yeah, and Doowovid, I wanted to ask you, how do you think that East Asia pulls it off as far as homogeneity? Because it seems like they've been exposed to as much globalism as anyone else, but China, continues to be like 98% Chinese or something, and like Japan is also pretty much fully Japanese. Like, how do they strike that balance if you say it's impossible?
Well, that's the point. I wasn't arguing policy. I was arguing ideas.
No, but you do argue that. You say that it's inevitable. Like, we can't resist these forces, but China seems to pull it off. Like, how do they manage that?
Because they have, their strategy is huge populations. I did mention that.
Okay, well, how about Japan? Japan has 120 million people. That's far fewer than us.
They have geographical benefit, also the fact that there's large bodies of water that make it difficult for
Korea.
people.
Korea is still attached to mainland East Asia.
Yeah, I'm saying Korea has huge problems. I'm saying relatively, North Korea is really good at preserving their civilization and culture and ethnicity. South Korea has a lot of.
South Korea is like 99% Korean, though. It's not just islands. Like there's none.
Yeah, but I'm not an expert in South Korea. South Korea also has national service, and I'm not an expert on world.
Sure, so they have national service. So they have programs in place that help maintain the social order. So like if they can do it, why can't we? Like if there are countries that manage to strike the balance between globalism
one thing is empire
and nationalism.
Empire by definition.
Empire, I do agree that empire. Yeah, but it's not a necessity that we have an empire, is it?
Well, it boils down to the question I was pushing JF or Brundle on, like how you're going to raise your kid and what's more important, his white identity or his excellence. And you say, okay, if JF or Brundle's an high IQ person and they would rather their kid be lower IQ and be white, or do they want to push the IQ and have them go to these elite multicultural schools that collect together the high IQ people?
Actually, yeah, dude, I have a question regarding that. So, like, say that you have a kid and he's like 105 IQ or something, but you can also adopt like a Chinese kid who's like 120 IQ. Would you swap out your blood for the 120 IQ Chinese kid because he's likely to bring more wealth to your family, or do you stick with your kin?
Well, that case,
how is it rational to stick with your kin in that case? Because clearly, like he's going to.
Because your legacy, there's a rationality.
So there's legacy involved. Okay, so there is some value to genetic preservation.
Do you prefer your kid to have a white friend with 100 IQ or a Chinese friend with 130 IQ? You're saying like University of Michigan, for example, it's very difficult to get into. It used to be you only need 1,100 SAT score in the best school in Michigan. Now you need like a 1,400 SAT score to get into the top university. Mm-hmm. And you got to make those decisions. So when you have your kid have a bunch of white friends and trying to preserve that culture, and then your kid can't get into University of Michigan, you got to.
Yeah, that doesn't quite address my earlier point. I just wondering like why does the analogy not apply to your race or your ethnic group? Like even if maybe you would not get like the highest IQ people, you still prefer your people,
Yeah, and can I?
Well, that's why I told people I wasn't prescribing what people should do. I just want people to be aware of the trade-offs that they make.
But you were saying it's more advantageous to let in like the 130 IQ Indian than to hire like 115 IQ like white engineer or something. Like,
well, I'm saying those aren't
the only variables. IQ is not the only variable involved. Is what I'm
more libertarian. Like I'm not prescribing what people should do. Well, but I wanted people to understand the trade-offs, the benefits to multiculturalism, and the trade-offs to their decisions.
Okay, so if I can speak from personal experience, I have I've been to university. I've had friends of all colors. Typically, I've had friends with like Asian, Indian background, Jewish background that sort of match my intellectual level. Guys I would consider even good friends, but the guys I had in my wedding were like 105 IQ white guys that like stood by me like always. I sort of had like a deeper kinship with. not something conscious or anything, but I mean, they were the guys that always had my back, that could, be counted on to like,
well, it's my argument about
like
your neighbor.
guys I've fought with together, guys that like have, taken me home when I'm wasted, whereas like some of the other, the high IQ types, like there's been times I've needed them and they have let me down. And, so I think I would take, my blood over like somebody, I'm not an IQ fetishist. Like,
that's the thing is like IQ is not the only variable involved. So that's like saying, of a random sampling of tall people, they're all going to be good at basketball. It's like, no, that is a prerequisite for being good at basketball, but that's not the only quality that makes you a good basketball player. The same applies to intelligence. I think it's maybe a prerequisite for living in a civilized society, but it's not the only. It's not the only
social economical status thing. If you're a doctor and you want to hang out in a group with a bunch of doctors, and that group is probably going to be multicultural and saying, okay, now I'd rather go to the
speaking of doctors, do you think that if you measured,
do you want to join the country club that matches your social economical status, or do you want to join the country club that matches your racial status? Or you want to have the best of both worlds? It might be impossible.
Yep. I mean, do you think that doctors of all races perform similarly? Like, or do you think there is a difference, measurable difference between? Goddamn, the fucking background noise. Sorry about that. I'm getting to a quieter area.
Yeah, I'm more statistical, so I'm going to try to find some studies and demonstrate this. But we know that disproportionately, like white people are disproportionately less number of doctors than their race. I mean, there's a lot of white doctors, obviously, but proportionally for the number of white people in America, there's more minorities who are doctors than there are white people, and certainly for like engineers, IT, a lot of these fields, and even socioeconomically, that white people are disproportionately, like you have Jews, Chinese, Asians, Indians, even Arabs that are disproportionately wealthier than whites in America.
Yeah, so, Doovid, if I can, there's a good question people wanted sort of to ask you about this, where I know you're putting out the data and things like that, but I guess I'm interested to know like what you would like to see. Like, would it be best if sort of every race was like represented in equal numbers in America, in your view, or like is a white supermajority good? Like that there is like some sort of cohesive center of gravity, socially and culturally, where
more libertarian
minorities are tolerated.
I'm more libertarian who would allow local rule. So I'm saying I was making the positive for multiculturalism, but I wasn't making the positive that it should be forced upon people. So I'm saying people should self-select if they're interested in the benefits of multiculturalism. So if you want education, you want achievement, you want wealth, and innovation and the top of technology, and to be a global citizen type person, that you will choose multiculturalism. But you don't have to make that choice. You should just be aware of the benefits. And I don't mind local rule so you could have white areas, and you could have, I don't mind people self-selecting and making these decisions for themselves, and it could play out differently in different areas. And that, that's like saying, like, I think we could preserve the union. Unfortunately you had to take those debates down with like me and Rodney about the balkanization of America, where you could have state rights.
Yeah, I think
you could have different state rights and preserve the union, where some states are red states, and the laws make it conducive to having huge white majorities, and you have other states that are going to become multicultural, and whites might not even be a plurality. They might form to be a minority, and we could still preserve the union.
Yeah. John Harris wants to send all the whites over 120 IQ to Israel and then talk trash on how native Israelis can't compete.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, hold on just a second. Yeah, Doovid, it seems like your main argument is that it's economically advantageous to allow multiculturalism to manifest, but that's because you assume that IQ is the only variable involved. But there are other things like loss of social. There is an economic cost to the loss of. Hold on. There's an economic cost to the. loss of social cohesion, for instance, and that has not been factored in. So if you consider factors like that, then it stops, the economic argument stops being a valid one.
Well, there's multiple benefits. I'm saying largely economically.
Yeah, other than IQ, what's the other benefit in food? Other than IQ and food, what are the benefits of multiculturalism?
But
I know you were going to, though, so that's why I preempted you.
I wasn't going to mention food because to me that's more like. But I mean, I do agree. I like ethnic food, but I mean, my arguments were mainly economic, education, and innovation, technology, global.
Yeah, IQ. That's all IQ. That all falls under the umbrella of IQ. I'm talking about.
Well, to me, it doesn't. That. They're all separate.
So education, technology. What else did you mention? Those are all IQ.
You could have a high IQ and not take education seriously. Anything, but
yeah, but the value that IQ has.
How does multiculturalism help education? I mean, for instance, like, are we supposed to, like, you know, it's kind of like this, like leftists or people of color always complain about like having to learn white man's history, and they sort of have a point in the sense of like it's not the history of their ancestors, but it is my ancestors' history and the ancestors of the historic American nation, okay? And like European history, even going back to the classical era, this is our, you know, intellectual inheritance. And so if we're going to have multiculturalism where everybody can learn their stuff, I mean, are kids supposed to spend all 18 years learning everybody else's history? I mean, would you have
that might be one aspect,
separate classes for different colors?
Pure excellence. Like did you take you know, how advanced did you get in high school? Were you able to take differential equations, physics-based, calculus-based physics, even organic chemistry in high school?
I took the math. I took AP histories.
Maybe you took calculus A, B, and BC, or you know.
BC.
But I mean, the levels now you get much more. People take their differential equations in high school. People take organic chemistry in high school. Those, you know, I know the high schools in my area, and all the elite high schools in this area are multicultural. And you know, like if you
that's right, but dude, the question is, does it benefit the natives? No, but dude, the central question should be: are the natives benefited from having
math and science,
math classes that are all Chinese and Indian? Because that's actually how my high school was too. It was like all Asian, and that's great. And they improved the status of my high school, but. Again, do the natives benefit in ways that are not
who's in those classes? Like who's in those classes? Like why exactly should white taxpayers pay for Chinese immigrants' kids to take calculus?
They don't pay for them. I mean, generally, unfortunately,
yes, they do.
I mean,
it
generally,
public school.
But generally, that the Asian people are overrepresented in taxes, and I know here you have these.
That's great.
White people
but how do the natives benefit?
White people get scholarships to go to these private schools. Like generally, the Indian and Chinese people pay full tuition to these private.
That's fantastic. Dude, even if they were perfect in like every way, like by every measure,
are getting scholarships.
Dude, even if they were like superior to the natives,
you get scholarships
like, in
to your
every
high
way.
School? I mean, you in your high school that was the case. Most of the
no, but answer that question. How do the natives benefit from their presence?
Like that's full tuition.
Okay.
And if there was a white person in your school, he was more likely to be on scholarship than an Asian. I mean,
like again,
fact or not.
But like, where's the benefit though? Where's the benefit though?
Wait, because that's empire. You want to maintain the empire or not?
Well, no, we don't. No one wants to maintain the empire.
How does the empire? How does the empire benefit? How does the empire benefits the elites, the imperial elites? How does
to some extent the empire benefits everybody because the welfare class, because you're like you're better to be in the welfare class of the empire than to not be in the empire, and saying that the foreign people coming in.
It sounds like the Soviet Union, dude. It sounds like the Soviet Union.
The same argument that you give generally for white people. Like in terms of tax base, like you're like I don't know, you say like a net benefit of a certain amount, a few $100,000 versus how much they give to the government in taxes and society.
Yeah,
versus how much they
remember
take.
my earlier question.
So like generally, Jews and Asians and even Muslims and Arabs have better statistics and numbers than whites on those. We give more to American society than whites if you look at those same studies, right?
Yeah, dude, you still haven't addressed my earlier question. What non-economical ways in what non-economical ways do whites benefit from the presence of like high IQ immigrants? Like, other than like education, like intelligence-related stuff. How do the natives benefit?
Yeah, like
opportunity,
non-materialist.
just the opportunity to have that.
What does that mean?
Educational opportunity, and technology and the bigger tax base.
Yeah, that's still like I'm saying non-intellectual, like non-economic ways.
Like IT systems. Like if you look at your local
That's
bureaucracy or library,
Yep.
and you have all this computer infrastructure, and these are benefits of multiculturalism. And if you look at your largely
they're
white
economic
neighborhoods,
benefits.
if you go to your homogenous white areas of America, like relative, you go to your local library or something like that, it's not going to be as nice or high tech or using the modern benefits of society as in the multicultural areas.
Yeah, you only address the economic question though. I'm saying what non-economic, non-technological.
Technological is not economic necessarily.
Yes, it is.
I don't know what you're unnecessarily giving word games that aren't benefiting the discussion.
Dude, you're playing the word games.
You're saying it's all
what's the central prerequisite for being good
innovation,
at
innovation affects
innovation? That's not a metric. You can't quantify innovation. Like,
yes, you can. I mean, you could look at cures to diseases, like advances in medicine.
Yes, and what's the common thread? What's the common thread through all those? It's intellect.
All material, whatever. Well, it's also all materialist.
Well, intellect is a common thread through anything in humanity. I'm saying, I mean, I don't get the benefit of the word games you're playing.
Well, Doovid,
we're arguing.
Doovid, do you consider? I mean,
pure projection.
I guess what I'm hearing is
you're incorrectly using pilpul, basically.
A focus on materialism.
Absolute projection. This is great.
Like, Doovid, do you see any? Is life more than just GDP? More than just material benefit of whatever policy?
Yeah, that's why I'm multicultural. The preservation, multicultural is the opposite of assimilation, and saying white people have largely lost their identity, and white people need multiculturalism also. JF needs multiculturalism because he doesn't want to be forced to speak English. And it's like, content watchers, like, okay, the U.S. forced everybody to speak English, and now technology, there are all these huge things like, because German people were the largest ethnic group in America, and there was such huge pressure to try to force people to not speak German, and even like the Amish and some of their like Mennonites till today still speak German here in America. But whatever the case is, that forced assimilation upon white people to Anglo culture was largely, would say negative or not, but it could be reversed, and be reversed for all people. People should have self-determination to be who we are, and that'll be the advantage of that's true civic nationalism. That's why I meant that if I don't care who my neighbor is, if they're a good neighbor. So if my good neighbor is black, white, Hispanic, it matters whether they're a good neighbor and not their ethnicity. But if I want to go to the social club or raise my kids in a certain way and preserve my culture, that should be allowed also. I mean, people confuse multiculturalism that for something else, that they don't see the element of protection of culture.
Doovid's roommate, come on in.
What if you know what would be actually also, hold on real quick, roommate, before you hop in, another great way to protect our culture would be to prevent the invasion of others who like actively try to tear down. Like, the fact is, like, there's this ideal scenario that you're advocating where all these like third world immigrants will come here and somehow allow white people to freedom of association. Hold on.
I'm saying I made the point with JF. You're arguing immigration. You're not arguing multiculturalism. You're making a completely separate issue and saying there's different understandings of multiculturalism.
No, it matters. Well, Doovid, here's how we got here. Doovid, we got to a country that is no longer 90% white because of immigration. Like, they're inextricably linked. Okay, and the fact is, like, what we see in practice is that non-white minorities are hell-bent on taking our wealth from us. Like, they are not going to permit white people to freely associate and exclude them from their social circles because whites largely, I mean, Jews disproportionately, but still whites control most of the wealth in this country, access to jobs and things like that. And if whites were allowed to freeze out people they didn't want to be around, these immigrants would be very upset. Not to mention that the welfare state binds us together economically, where like successful, like whatever, whites, Asians, like light-skinned peoples are forced to pay for browns and blacks.
Hey, Brundle. As a serious question, though, I agree with everything you're saying, and I wonder, how do we handle, let's say these policies are something that like were one day in effect, and how would we handle though? Like the fallout from imperialism is so fucking deep and goes so far that it's like there would need to be a massive project to take money out of something and rebuild the third world, and it would have to be like an agreement among many nations, because I mean,
why would we have to do that? Why would we have to do that?
Well, I guess I mean, because those places are uninhabited, so people don't want to come here anymore. Like you kick them out, and you're going to send a bunch of Liberians to Liberia just to get like slaughtered because there's like a puppet government that that a European nation kind of installed there. Like I mean,
well, no one's talking about kicking out blacks though. We're saying like the Mexicans, like the 30 million invaders. Like,
well, that's not his point.
They don't have
it's not the specific color. That's not his point. But no, look, I think that different people have to like in some sense, white people went through a barbaric time, their own barbaric time, in order to like rise to what their civilization has become. And I think, colonialism has sort of like prevented them from undergoing that process. There's no doubt about that. I'm not a huge fan. But like unless they organically like form their own like functioning societies, they're never going to like really be anything other than our pets.
No, that's true. It's just like, I think the thing is like when you look at like how Mexican society was structured pre-colonialism, like different races, and this is like something I talk about with Babs a lot, they operate on like a completely different existential wavelength. And for them, that's what it needs to be. But like now there's just like been this Western mode of existence imposed upon the rest of the world. And it's like now it created a mess. Like, I mean, traditional African societies are fine for them. We would, as white people, I'm a Jew, but we would all do horribly if we were plopped in the Congo and made to take really powerful hallucinogens and hunt with darts. Like, we would suck at that, just like they suck at living in our societies.
Right.
But, like, we've created well, not we, but there's been a situation that's created where those societies have now, like, been westernized to an extent, but it's like they can't.
I don't know if it's just that I'm higher IQ or something, however you put it, that I feel confident I could thrive in any society, and you guys don't agree with that tenet. I mean, you look in the mirror and you see yourself as defective, that you would be incapable of thriving in any society, or just as a man, you stand before God and the creator of the world, that you don't think that you would be able to thrive in any society.
How would you do in the Congo?
You would die of malaria or sunburn.
Well, I think I would fulfill a function for society and be valuable to society.
You'd be a merchant.
Well, I mean, whatever function I filled, but yeah, I think I would find a valuable role to fulfill in society, and I would be able to thrive within finding a role and function in society, and that would be enough for me to thrive.
Dude, see, I don't think it would work like that. I think you'd be there.
I'd become like a multi-millionaire or like lead the nation. But yeah, I think I would.
I think the future needs to be.
I would aim towards upper middle class in any society. It would be my expectation that.
What about a society that didn't function in that way? There were no like obvious class distinctions like that. In a tribal society, that's like you can't be an upper middle class in like the Ubuntu tribe or something. It doesn't exist.
I mean,
there's no infrastructure. There's no guarantee.
I mean, possibly a society that requires
theft,
some sort
graft,
of extreme
corruption,
physical ability, like the Eskimos or Siberia or something like that, or some that has a huge amount of natural adaptivity to harsh conditions. Maybe not, but like any of the recognized countries, I would be able to thrive in.
So Sarah Sopovich says Doooovid would sell rum to Africans in exchange for slaves.
And God forbid. Like very few people are serious and want to examine these things intellectually, and it's unfortunate. And even the back and forth, to really try to examine what things factor into the equation, how much weight do they have in the equation, and to really, people who desire truth and to want to get to the bottom of these issues. Like I probably will make a response video that will just be me doing a presentation.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And analyzing data, and people have to look at the and people aren't systematic thinkers to try to really separate what's going on. Look at the benefit of being part of empire, the part of America like dense population, the resource inequality that is basically unsustainable. Saying that the empire of America is unsustainable ecologically for many different reasons, and what's the best path charting forward is. So that's why I told Jeff we can't predict the future. All we could do is make our best decisions and hopes, and generally the Jewish people as a whole collectively, whether we've decided or not, or greater forces, whatever reason, are on the side of multiculturalism. That's the side of history that most Jews have chosen. That's the side that most people, white people, have chosen. Most, that's what we said. The paradigm has changed, and saying even the Jews on my channel who disagree with me, they're in a minority, and even the whites who are less so. Generally, most whites in the West favor multiculturalism.
That's not true.
I don't think that's true at all.
It is true.
I don't know where
we
you're
went
going.
over the data.
Doooovid, I think it's something like 55%. 65% of Americans have said that they think that mass immigration is a huge problem.
You keep on conflating mass immigration with multiculturalism. You could desire to decrease immigration.
Right, but what happens with multiculturalism? Mass immigration is a byproduct of it. It's a really shitty one. That's not
multiculturalism has to be thought out and planned and implemented. Like city planning, urban planning has to be thought out and implemented. And you're still like a multiculturalist who wants different people and to have society that's not based on ethnicity but based on ideas is multiculturalism. It's like when you talk about invaders or something like that, you're basically using strawman to attack multiculturalism.
I like the French New Right guy Alain de Benoit says about ethnopluralism, which is like where within a city there would be designated neighborhoods that would be governed by themselves under like a bigger government, but I do think that like ethnic enclaves as opposed to like the melting pot is the only maybe sort of viable solution in a city like Paris or something, as opposed to like what we have where everybody is like forced to try and work with one another and like and be on the same playing field. I mean, it's just awful. It makes no fucking sense. It's working out terribly. Like, hey, I don't see any.
So you want to derive the benefits of empire, and it's basically impossible. So you're saying
nobody wants that. Who wants to derive
the benefits of empire in America?
Who wants to derive the benefits of empire? Whoever said that?
Well, you're an American citizen. Why'd you come here? Why'd you come to America?
I didn't come
Not
here.
because it was an empire.
Yeah, I mean, why'd you come to America?
I didn't come to America.
You're saying you
have a better life, I guess.
Your parents brought you here.
Yeah.
So why
don't
you?
Well, let's generalize that. Why did immigrants come to America in the past at all? And it wasn't even before it was an empire. Like why did they come?
They came to find their queen in Queens, and then they ended up working at McDowell's.
But I'm saying generally America is empire. The people who come here, it's because of the status of America.
Why did people go to Sweden, Doovid? Where's Sweden's empire? Is that why they go there?
Yeah, that's it, dude.
But I'm saying that the fact is that people come here. Like, I mean, I went through the data. That's why I went through the data. 60% of migrants over the world, their choice of the 250 million migrants all over the world, 60% of them, their choice destination is America. And people come to Europe, largely they would rather come to America. Even like the African people and the Muslims coming into Europe, most of those people want to come to America.
Yeah, I'm saying we can generalize it, though. You said that people want to come to the West because of empire.
If you're a Jew, you were allowed into America, and saying, okay, so you just want to take your Jewish privilege and say you're lucky you got into the empire because you're a Jew.
Well, Doovid, I think a lot of fucking Jews came here because they were dealing with like pogroms and diaspora. Like,
yeah, but you could have went to India. Why'd you come to America?
I didn't come to America.
I mean, your parents did.
I don't think India is not a country that like welcomes mass immigration. They have enough fucking people and they're smart about it.
Doovovid, you're making, okay, hold on. Let me distill your argument. You're saying that empire is the motivational force behind immigration. So I'm asking, there are plenty of European countries that don't have empires, yet they're still experiencing a lot of mass migration. So like that argument kind of breaks apart.
Yeah, because people want to be part of better economic, social. They want to.
So it's not because they want to be part of better social, economic, whatever.
It's related to empire.
Yeah. So okay.
And it's
there's countries without that variable involved, and there's still mass migration.
But people want to come to America a lot more than they want to come to Switzerland.
I'm saying you can. Okay.
I mean, the facts are pretty clear. I mean, like I showed the data. That's why I went through. So I don't have to argue these stupid arguments again. The data is clear on the matter.
All right, brothers. I have to run. Levi, good to talk to you.
You too, Brindle.
Doovid's roommate, nice to see you again.
Okay, I appreciate you, Brindle.
And Doovid, yeah.
You're the force behind. You're the force behind all of this. Like I probably never would have started my show or doing any of this if it wasn't for you. So props. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. You're very welcome. I like what you do.
You're the one who pushed me on JF. You're the one. You decided against most people in your own show who didn't even. Why you having Doovid on with JF, and then you pushed me on to have again, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're very welcome. All right, fellas, take care.
Later. Yeah, I got to get going in like a minute too because my phone's at 3%. But anyway.
Okay, yeah, I'll put the link, and I hope I don't get too many trolls, but I'm going to attempt to just put the link in the chat if anyone wants to join this discussion.
I would advise against it, but okay.
That's how I do, like, saying that means basically my ideas on immigration. Like, I have a more positivistic view of human nature, and willing to.
Let's try open chat borders.
Saying that, but that was my point in the belief system, and I am going to have to do some more studying. And I looked through quite a bit. I only discussed with JF last night what the topic was going to be because multiculturalism is something I've debated many times. So but I did do like 5-6 hours of research earlier today, and I've been doing research over the last few weeks with Brundle and my streams about this topic, and I'll continue more to try to put evidence for those who are more evidence minded. So they have the and maybe like presentations, the philosophical framework for understanding these arguments. And
well, I'm actually going to get going, David, but thanks for talking. This was fun.
Okay. You have a good night.
Yeah, have a good night.
You still there? Did you leave too, Rumi? Okay, just me. I don't know. I don't have too much monologuing. Like I am going to go and try to get more details. If no one comes on, maybe, I don't know if it pays to go over this McKinsey study now. I mean, there's like 30 people here, so I put the link in the chat, and I don't think I have much strength to monologue on this issue. And I say the chat's just kind of, it's hard to follow. If people have any like direct questions or something they want to discuss, I'll read it. But it's hard, things, so many different comments, and people are having conversations. And I'm more, like autistic, pure intellectual. I want to get to the truth. I want to get to the bottom of these issues. I'm going to do research. For my first debate with JF, I ordered like 10 books on the subject related to the soul and consciousness and Western science. And I didn't put that much study into multiculturalism. I'm going to try to at least do some research to give a little presentation on a basis for understanding that there are recognized benefits to multiculturalism, specifically in education, innovation, economics, and people are really just like like my fellow Levi and my roommate just trying to like out-pilpul me, and they don't really have Talmudic background. I've been studying Talmud my whole adult life. I was in Mir Yeshiva, and I studied under famous rabbis in Brooklyn. I don't think these guys have much of a chance of like out-pilpuling me, and then I listen to their pilpul. They should try. Like I like pilpul, but pilpul's not just arguing for arguing. The purpose is to try to get to truth, and it's a method of discourse to try to question what is reality. And I did that long stream, like 4.5 hours last night, on the philosophy of science, the philosophy of social science, for how do we deduce truth, how do we get to truth, what truth could be derived from statistics. I mean, you want to come on, John? I'm not sure. I mean, because there are substantial people watching, and maybe people are, still coming on JF and after. If anyone wants to add, and I'll even, just if someone even wants to monologue and why they disagree with me, that's fine. I'll give you the platform. You don't have to like directly debate with like point counterpoint. If someone just wants to give a counter argument. Josh, I don't usually do streams like this. I usually do presentations or facts. I might have people on to talk about it or more serious talks. So these kind of like blood sports, open talks, I do less occasionally, or occasionally do like Ask the Rabbi, and usually theme driven, because like these become kind of a mess, and I like to have more topic orientation of what we're talking about and sticking to the topic. And so these open streams become kind of messy. So I do them occasionally. I thought it'd be good for the post show, just see how people respond. And you think esoteric, like you see a lot of the greatest rabbis, like people did a lot. Take your life seriously. The Orach Chaim, for more like ask like Judeo, says in the Bible that the righteous people live their days, and the wicked people their days live them. So like people listen to my series on duties of the heart and path of the just and ethics of the Father. Take life seriously, and I guess my roommate's still here, but
my internet time crapped out.
Yeah, I mean, the point, like, take life seriously. There's a lot of time. Human potential is a lot, and people have to work at it, and like avoid degeneracy. Speed reading. I could even do a stream on speed reading. Like, I highly recommend speed reading. I've taught hundreds of people how to speed read. It's a pretty basic skill. It was like, who was it? Woods. I forget the name even. That my father had the book I read when I was a kid. The famous one. It's not a Jewish wisdom. The generic wisdom of speed reading. But human potential is a lot, and you look at the greatest people throughout history. They were doctors, they were bankers, and in their spare times they were intellectuals. So it's just a matter of avoiding degeneracy and making trade-offs and good decisions if that's what you value. You have anything you want to add?
How fast can you read?
I could probably read like 1,000 words a minute. I mean, depends on how seriously. Like, I mean, you like the finger technique, and basically the idea of speed reading is when you're young, you look at words like on the screen. You might, so here you have esoteric, Doooovidism, post-JF, public debate show, multiculturalism. So when you're young, the word esoteric, you would be like ESOTERIC, like esoteric. And if you knew the word, you would put the letters together and then know the word. But at a certain point, you don't have to put the letters together. You know the word in one take. So you don't have to look at the 8 different units of intake of esoteric. You get to intake the word in one take. And generally, people stop learning after that. But the same technique that's used to intaking a whole word at a time, as opposed to putting letters together, could be used for phrases, lines, or even paragraphs. So like post-JF public space debate show. So none of us probably watching this stream have to like post. We just take in post as one intake. And so the same way that the one intake of post, the whole thing of post-JF public space debate show could be done in one intake. And so one of the first techniques of speed reading is to turn off the voice in your mind, because generally when people read, they say out loud in their head what they're reading as they read it, which could help with memory. There are certain benefits if it's important, but in order to speed read, the first thing you have to do is to shut off the voice in your head. And then there's like the finger technique, where you try to intake the whole line at a time, and you hold your finger in the center of the page, And so this technique, you start with words to phrases, where you practice intaking phrases as one single unit, and eventually you could intake lines as a single unit, and some people could even intake pages as a whole unit. And so your memory is not quite as good when you speed read, but you can have pretty good recall. And there's been
the Supreme Court nomination.
I don't know too much about it. I didn't even look into that yet. I mean,
where do you stand on abortion?
Generally, I'm libertarian, so personally, I'm pro-life, but I'm not sure that I would advocate for that for policy. I don't necessarily have I don't have a dog in that fight, so to say. I'm not a woman, so I don't have strong opinions about what the government should do. If anyone asked me my opinion, I would basically universally, in all cases, be pro-life, that I would recommend being pro-life. But I'm not prescriptive, telling people what to do, or thinking the government should force people to do that.
Is
not clear.
Find libertarians in the Hasidic community?
Well, I mean, the community, because they have advocates that are usually in like a block vote, are usually Democratic. Most Hasidim live in urban areas, Orthodox Jews that are Democratic districts. Like New York, obviously, like a Republican has almost zero chance in winning in any of the areas that have large Orthodox Jewish areas. So the strategic, just which Democrat do you support? And, or if they do, they play. So Hasidim might tend towards libertarian, but they're more politically astute. So I doubt they'd waste their vote like that. So me, I'm more idealistic in that matter, but Hasidim are probably more practical and wouldn't want to waste a vote being libertarian.
From what I know, though,
you ask them idealistically, I do think a lot of Hasidim would kind of be idealistically like, just let people do what they want, live their life as they see fit, and the government shouldn't meddle too much in what people do.
From what I know of the Orthodox community, though, and I mean, my father knows a lot of people in the Orthodox community in New York, and they tend to only vote with Israel in mind, Israel in their pockets. So they tend to. And so Israel in their checkbooks, so they tend to vote Republican, from what I know. And I know, like, a lot of my dad's business associates and stuff who are Orthodox voted Trump.
But I mean, not in the presidential elections, maybe. But it's saying in New York City, a vote for the Republicans is a wasted vote. So yeah. even if you have strategically, just like you mean Hasidim, if they might have, or Jews if are more strategic than that even if they have libertarian values, they don't want to waste their vote. So even if you have Republican values, generally, because of the multicultural historical nature of Jews, that we live in largely African American or minority neighborhoods, that there's almost zero chance that a Republican is going to get elected. So voting Republican is a wasted vote. So strategically, it's a question: which Democrat are you going to support?
Yeah. All right, David. Well, I have to get going. I have to go take care of my dog.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for joining. Thanks for talking with me.
Take care.
I guess I still got 30 people on, so I put the link in the chat again. I'm not sure if people want to come on debate or they want to hear more about speed reading or a monologue on multiculturalism, or people have questions. It's a little hard to follow what's going on in the chat. The link's in the chat. I don't know if Babs even watched my debate with JF, and we've talked about multiculturalism so much in the past. They might not have anything to add to it. And say generally multiculturalism. Okay, Tom, I like speed reading, and fortunately that's it. Like what I told you about how the same process when you're a little kid, that you learn to take words in one intake instead of sounding out the vowels. The single letters to make a word, and just usually people stop with that, but the brain is capable of much more. So just people don't think about the technique. So to some extent, you could explain speed reading in a minute. That's it. Just like you train yourself to intake phrases in one intake, and then you train yourself to intake whole lines in one intake, and then you could do even more. And so the technique when you're reading, let me see if I'm going to put. Let me just. So this is in Hebrew, but you could start. Generally, you want to turn the voice in your head off. So the biggest impediment to speed reading is saying the words out loud in your head, because you could only read as quickly as you could say the word out loud in your head. And generally that's only, like 200-300 words a minute. Like if people remember like the Microman commercials, who was one of the fastest speakers in the world, and I think he could speak like 300 words a minute. But generally people converse like 100 words a minute or so, and maybe they could get up to 200 words a minute. Even the voice in your head, you could do a little bit quicker. But the biggest impetus to speed reading is the natural tendency to want to say the word out loud with the voice in your head. So you just have to shut that voice off in your head, and you got to work. You got to see that you actually have retention. So you could start with you reading with your finger, so to say. So I mean, this is Hebrew, so it's right to left, but it will apply to any language. And Hebrew is actually a little harder because the way the vowels are structured. But I just happen to have that here. So you can start like, shut the voice off in your head and just read with your finger. So you're, this Hebrew, Lishanenu, Nagvir, Shibasenu, Itanu, Mi, Adon, Lanu. But you're following what you're reading with your finger. And eventually you want to read with your finger straight down the page. So, you'll be reading and you have your finger in the center and you want to intake the whole line in one intake. So you're looking at this whole line in one mental intake, the same way that one of these words, you don't have to look letter by letter, but you could intake one whole word in a single mental intake. You could intake the whole line in one intake, and that's why you so you start with going like this on the page until you feel comfortable going like this. And you see, when you're going finger by like this, you'll start to be able to taking in phrases at a time. And they might be phrases that are very familiar to you. I don't know if I have, I bought this book for my debate with JF, Newton and Empiricism, because, I thought it was relevant. And, so here, I don't know if people are going to be able to actually see the English, but, here, what all this means is that Newtonian Rule 2 is not just an elaboration of Boyle's thesis that the excellence of an explanatory reduction relates to the greater generality of the terms to which the phenomenon are reduced. So let's say what all this means. So you could imagine in one intake, if you're moving your finger along, and so what all this means in separate intakes, but that you could imagine one mental intake that as one unit, your mind intakes what all this means. And then if you train yourself more, what all this means in the Newtonian Rule 2, that you could do that in one intake. And so I said you start by moving your finger across the page. And then eventually, when you're capable of intaking the whole line, your eyes might look. So if you could intake 4 or 5 words and put your finger on the center, so you look to the left, and you might intake what all this means is that Newton's rule number 2. And then you look on the right is not just an elaboration of Boyle's. And then eventually you might be able to take the whole line in one intake. And even more than that, you could train yourself to take in multiple lines in intake. And this has been well proven and documented. And you could watch it. You could do YouTube searches and see people who do the speed reading technique and be tested on it. It's a basic skill. I highly recommend it. I've taught literally hundreds of people how to speed read. I took us, in 7th grade in public school even. They had Bill Cosby, famous Bill Cosby, has a lecture series on speed reading, and I remember taking that, and we learned the technique. And you have the words going down the page, where you have the words going at a certain rate, like 200 words a minute, 400 words a minute, 600 words a minute. So you could actually get those computer programs or videos that will allow you to test your speed reading or control the rate at which you're reading, and then test the retention afterwards. But that's the essence of the technique. So really, that's all you have to do. Shut off the voice in your head, because then you can't read quicker than the voice in your head. So first thing you have to do is shut it off, and you might lose retention. The beginning, if you don't say it out loud again in your head, it's like, oh, I retained nothing. But eventually, you'll see that your eyesight could intake the whole of the information. That the repeating the knowledge with your voice inside your head doesn't necessarily benefit your retention, and just your eyes seeing the word could have the same quality to the retention, and that voice in your head will actually just slow you down. So that's probably the most complicated part of it. And if you do like much Buddhist, Hindu meditation, even like Arya Kaplan on Jewish meditation, if any of you read Arya Kaplan on Jewish meditation, that's what he says. The first step is to shut the voice in your head down. And so it's similar for speed reading. So if you're familiar with meditation and already capable of shutting the voice in your head down, you'll be more likely to pick up speed reading. So if you've never done any meditation and the whole idea of shutting this voice in your head down might seem impossible to you, that will be the longest step in your ability to pick up speed reading. Yeah, Corey, there's plenty of resources for speed reading, YouTube videos, free apps that will test you, and it's a simple thing because most people read all the time. Like I assume, and anybody who's watching my stream is probably largely intellectual. I think Josh is mentioning my eye movement, and it might be related to what he said, that my soul isn't behind, something like my soul's not behind my eyes. So when I'm arguing these ideas, I'm mentally thinking about it. So my eyes are just randomly moving because internally I'm thinking about these ideas. I'm not really looking at something. So, things might attract my attention, or it might be like a thought pattern for memory. When your eyes move, that you're trying to recall memory, and that there's a connection between eye movement and memory recall. So when you see my eyes moving, it's like internally seeing like the hard drive that I'm searching my brain to remember or think about something. So when you see my eyes move, you're witnessing me think. And there's been some studies on that about eye movement, and that'd be interesting too to present some of these studies. But I'm not really looking at anything. And JF is he didn't even have his feed, because I didn't want to risk any bandwidth or slow it down. So I didn't have his internal feed. I was watching live on YouTube, which was a few seconds delayed from his voice. So I wasn't really looking at anything. So my eyes are just kind of moving. My main thing was my voice. I was listening I was listening to what he was saying. I was kind of glancing at the chat. And so my eyes are moving just because I'm thinking. And, like I'm a chess player like that. I do a lot of things. I think there's been demonstrations. People's eyes move quickly. It's like it might be related to like rapid eye movement in sleep, like REM sleep. If people are familiar with that, where there's certain sort of like the different theories about what happens during rapid eye movement in the sleep patterns when you're asleep and dreaming, and there's rapid eye movement. So it's similar. Like I'm searching my brain. All these books I've read and all this stuff I've thought about, and I gotta immediately put the best answer out. And I don't like wasting people's time. There's like 900 people watching me, and I don't want to waste anyone's time. I wanted to be able to think on the spot and not waste people's time and give them over information. And so like all these books and all this knowledge and thought I've done on the subject, and I got to on the spot come up with that. So I'm thinking, and I think that my eyes are moving, and maybe JF relatively, he's not thinking so much. So you don't see, I saw his eyes moving a little bit, or sometimes you see like eyebrows moving. I could do that voluntarily, like a single, like an eyebrow. So I see JF occasionally will give like an eyebrow, or will move his eyes. But relatively, he's probably not thinking that much on the spot, because he's got the advantage in the home turf and these ideas in side. But even that, I think in anybody, if you look at JF also, you'd see his eyes occasionally flickering around like that, and that's a sign like, okay, I got him to think, and he's searching his mind in his memory to try to come up with the best answer. And I'm not sure if I covered the speed reading enough, or anyone has more questions. I mean, yeah, relatively, if you learn speed reading from me, that's probably the most valuable thing. Because I said, anyone who's watching my stream, chances are is relatively intellectual and reads relatively quite a bit. And like my mother was she retired, but she was a top lawyer. She read hundreds of pages every day, 500 pages every day, and like read the bill in Congress, like all this legislation and legal documents. Some politicians or lobbyists or lawyers, maybe frame games, probably could speed read and skim through thousands of pages of information. If it's like Obamacare, the Healthcare Act, data, to skim through hundreds of pages. And usually when you hit more important information, you'll slow down, and you might even say the words out loud in your head because there's certain memory or understanding level. So, if you're reading and you're reading straight down the page like this, and then you get to a part and it's like, oh, I really want to know that, you might slow down and then go back to speed reading. So that's a pretty common technique. Yeah, I mean, Shabbatai Tzvi is pretty interesting. I actually just I read Gershon Schoen's whole book on Shabbatai Tzvi and other information. I just listened to this like 20-hour lecture on Yeshiva University about Shabbatai Tzvi. And it's interesting, like identitarianism. I might have to do like Ask the Rabbi stream or some data about Shabbatai Tzvi. I just ordered, if anyone knows Martin Gilbert. Does anyone in the chat know about like copyright laws? Martin Gilbert has, like Sir Martin Gilbert of England has this book of maps of Jewish history, and it's very interesting. I couldn't really find any good maps, so I had owned this book in the past. I don't know what happened to it, so I just bought it again, and I don't know if I could take pictures and use it on my YouTube page for a slideshow. Otherwise, I got to find some good material to do a presentation. Meanwhile, there's other better information. I'm not an expert in Shabbatai Tzvi, although it's connected to like relatively. I compared with my roommate. We talked about this on Bab's Blue Lizard stream about Shabbatai Tzvi is kind of like the proto-Zionist Herzl, who really goes around Europe and even the Middle East and Egypt and gets Jews to be interested in supporting Israel. He raises a bunch of money. He helps establish the communities there, and he also has this view to Jews that your place isn't in Europe. So there's an interesting connection that I mentioned, JF, about the identitarian connection to Shabbatai Tzvi. But it's really a matter for a different, and it's possible there are multiculturalists that obviously Jews are part of different nations, and there's connections between Jews, but the connection could be weak, and Jews, like we did the ADL survey, and people, Jews there have a stronger allegiance to Israel or the Jewish people than to their nation, but that's not necessarily true. A lot of Jews do have just as strong of allegiance to their own nation or to at least the Jewish people in the country they live in versus the nation that they would be hard to unify. So like, Shabbatai Tzvi, I think he was, from Turkey, and he, in his people, they go unifies these Jews from all across Europe, from England to the Netherlands, Italy, Turkey, Egypt. So it's quite a bit of the, proto-Zionism in his movement. Yeah, I mean, when I talk about Judaism a lot, I talk about the sages or the tradition, because obviously Jews could believe whatever they want. People are people. And so anyone who's a scholar in Judaism, they know the names of the sages of the Talmud. And so you're quoting the Talmud. That's not doesn't correspond to what Jews believe. Or if you have you want to ask the rabbi in the afternoon, like tomorrow, you put a comment in it, and I mean, you could comment, some questions. I don't know how much time, to do random research. Like all these topics are interesting, and certain things, time is short. I can't research everything, and I'm an intellectual. I'm curious about almost everything. If you wanted to tell me about Filipino culture, or something that happened in the 13th century in Filipino culture, I would probably find that interesting. I might even buy a book about it and read it. But time is limited, and you got to use your choices wisely. And I'm an engineer. I love science. I like knowing how things work and technology, and that fits into multiculturalism. And then relatively, that's why I feel pretty comfortable here in America. People see me on Facebook or even YouTube, and saying people could value my worth as an American because I could do useful things for society. But that's not why I love science. I love science just because I like understanding how things work, not necessarily because it makes me valuable for society or even I can make money off of it. Generally, I just have curiosity because I like to know how things work, and it's interesting to research. And I like all knowledge. To me is interesting and useful. And that's why I recommended speed reading. And I'll get back to what I was saying. Like, people watching my stream are probably intellectual. They probably like understanding things, and they probably spend a decent time reading. Most people I'm friends with, read quite a bit. A few hours a day. I was getting back to my mother, who might, in her heyday, read like 1,000 pages a day. I might read 500 pages a day. Like Patrick Little said in that interview, he reads like a big book once a week. And he's probably a relatively big reader, but I read like a big book like every other day, and I could pound through smaller books, like a few in a day, like a 100-some page book. I could probably read this in an hour. In many days, I might read multiple books this size, depending on what I'm studying or the detail. And like if anyone saw my stream the other day, like obviously if it's like mathematical logic or like a textbook on advanced physics, that might take me long times and long amounts of study. But even that, like if you've read a lot of mathematical notation or equations, you could also speed read equations in the same way, where you could, the same concept where if it was a calculus equation and you're just starting with calculus and you look at like the integral sign or the derivative sign, dx, dy, in binomials or whatever part of the equation is, and you have to look at each one as a separate unit. But after a while, if you become very familiar with it, you could take in the whole equation in one step. And I used to be a math tutor and teach like algebra in the same way. Algebra, which is comes from the Arab wisdom, where you do the same operation on both sides of the equation. So anyone who's historically taken algebra or calculus, there's a lot of steps, and you could do each step separately. As if you do square each side or subtract something from both sides, and permutation by permutation, you do one step at a time. But as you move on, you could do most of those permutations in your head, do multiple steps, and even to some level where you could solve an equation completely in your head. So even if it was like a derivative or an integral, where you could just basically solve it in your head. I don't know if anyone saw on Twitter. I'm going to bring it even. There was a big backgammon tournament in Michigan this weekend, and Arthur Benjamin, I got a picture with him on my Twitter, but anyone is familiar with Arthur Benjamin. I assume he's a Jew. Like, I didn't ask him about Judaism, and he may like married a non-Jewish woman, or I don't even know, but I didn't speak to him about that, but I'm just guessing by his name and looking at him that he was a Jew. But here's the magic of math, and here also secrets of mental math. And I even my father has the same name as me, but I even got them autographed to from Arthur Benjamin. So these concepts of mental mathematics is similar to speed reading. And it's pretty interesting. I mean, like I competed in math as a kid. Like, I could do somewhat mental mathematics, like 2-digit multiplication in my head pretty well. 3-digit, I don't know, like addition. I day traded. I was, in the stock market, being good with basic arithmetic. But there's techniques, like even a below average intelligent person could train themselves to do mental mathematic operations in their head pretty quickly. You don't have to be a high IQ person. Being a high IQ person might help. And just like speed reading, I'm putting the link in the chat because I don't know, like I got more people watching me than usual, so I'm just monologuing, and it's hard to find, people I mentioned like chemistry, organic chemistry, maybe like JF, if he's looking at like genetics or something, the same thing would apply, that this concept of speed reading, where, maybe JF could look at like a huge chemical compound of like a gene, and in one intake take the whole thing, as where one person would like carbon, hydrogen, double bond, and put it together piece by piece, as opposed to someone who really studied the subject could look at a whole complicated compound and intake it in one intake. So like, I hope that people increase their mental activity. It'll lead to more intellect on these decisions, and to me, that's partially multiculturalism, that we learn from each other, and that different people have their benefits, and you can meet. I got a book on Vedic mathematics and like mathematic techniques and tricks from the ancient Hindu Sanskrit scripture, And there's a lot of stuff on that you benefit from other people being around, and just like I could help you out. Like I said, if I taught you speed reading and you come back in a year from now and it's like, I've been speed reading, I'm reading 500 words a minute, and that's quite a bit, and let alone 1,000 words a minute. But if you read 500 words a minute, you doubled how much you could read. That's twice the amount of information that you're going to be able to acquire, and they'll make a huge impact in your life. So learning how to speed read possibly is the single most important benefit you could give yourself. And I was saying that those benefits of speed reading will also apply to science and mathematics or different issues where in taking representational logic, numbers, formulas. I do want to stream on Freemasonry. I have all these books behind me. I thought I would use Albert Pike in this, if people are familiar. This is Albert Pike is interesting because he was part of the Confederate Army, and he was actually the negotiator between the Cherokee Nation. And I'm actually part Cherokee, but Albert Pike was the negotiator for the Confederate Army between the Confederates and the Cherokee Nation. And I research his bio and start with a bio, but I was thinking of streaming on morals and dogma, and specifically the Scottish Rite for their system of 33 degrees of Masonry, and the Esoteric. And to some extent, I think the revival of the West might be from reviving Freemasonry, because Freemasonry it was really a great way for amalgamating information in terms of the sciences, religion, and esotericism. And these have taken divergences, like JF, our debates on evolution, where there's a big divergence now between esoteric subjects and the science, as opposed to like in the time of Isaac Newton in I have these books they're interesting, like Freemasonry and the birth of modern science. And like everyone knows, like Isaac Newton was a Freemason, Boyle was a Freemason, Lagrange was a Freemason. Almost everybody in the original rise of European science was a Freemason. And I have a book on Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton is really one of my favorite, even he's not a Jew, but Isaac Newton's probably my favorite person in history. Real intellectual, possibly the most influential man in intellectual history. And but eventually Freemasonry dies out because of, it's still around today, but possibly some sort of revival to connect all this stuff together to save humanity, that these divergent, society is fracturing. And I don't know if Jake, I'm going to keep on monologuing because, I got a lot of people watching, and it's hard for me to read the chat. I'm putting the link in the chat every once in a while. And because usually I'm more like, I don't monologue. I prepare and present information, or I have a conversation, debate. But I have wanted to, that would be a big project on Freemasonry. And I have all these books on like a whole shelf. And, for example, and this is historical, and maybe some people will appreciate this. Here's the Scottish Rite initiation rite. This was actually interesting because it was written by a Jew, and Scottish Rite in America has a lot of Jewish history. Ezra, I forget the name. I have to look into it, but so you actually have the rites of the different degrees and the ceremonies and the speeches, and then there's different systems like Order of the Eastern Strides, Duncan's. I got the Knight Templars, which wasn't Scottish Rite's the 33-degree system, and there's some that have more, and but the Albert Pike is a Kabbalist, and it's interesting the weight that Kabbalah has in it, and just the ordering and structure for, like, I want to advance in my life. There's so much information out there. How do you structure this information in terms of like work and health and science, organization of man? How do you organize all that stuff? And the organizational structure of Freemasonry is really, really profound. And if I did the Scottish Rite, I'd probably have to do a lecture on, an introductory lecture and then a lecture on all 33 degrees. So that'd be 34 lectures. And that'd be quite a bit of research. I hope to do it. Someone join me?
Hi, Doowovid. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we should. I know.
Shivers.
I know Google was censoring a lot of your comments. So I hope you could keep your mouth clean. But I'm happy for you to join me.
Yeah. How exactly is? I just want to know how exactly would is multiculturalism good for the West? Like for instance, for whites.
Well, there's multiple prongs to it. So I'm not saying. Obviously, you have to make your own decisions. I'm an individualist, and I'm not prescribing what people should do. I was just saying I like multiculturalism. There's a lot of benefits to multiculturalism. There's problems with multiculturalism and negative things to it also. But generally, it's empire and great society, in that if you want the West to maintain as an empire, great society, multiculturalism is probably a necessary part. And that's why I'm going to try to later this week present evidence in some of these studies to show that educational innovation, economic output, that there's a lot of reasonable evidence connecting the multiculturalism to better outcomes in education and economics and innovation, and possibly even mentioned in terms of national security or military units that are integrated and have different peoples together perform better than military units that are racially homogenous. And so if you, saying obviously you're not using your real name or face, and that's fine. But if you identify, if you're white and identify yourself as white, and you say you don't care, you prefer a white society, or you want to argue on the facts, and you got to look at the trade-offs on it. So what are the benefits of multiculturalism? What are the problems of it? And you make your decision from there. So I'm not prescribing what people should do. I just want to say why I like multiculturalism, why I think it's better for society, and then you could make your own conclusions.
I mean, yeah, I'd say, well, growing up, I'm in a pretty liberal city, so or a liberal area such as Massachusetts, and growing up poor, I can say multiculturalism hasn't helped me or anyone that I know personally out. So
you're saying directly in terms like money in your pocket, or say if I could argue from studies that indirectly maybe it helped you in terms of the tax base, in terms of innovations that you use regularly, maybe like, do you have a cell phone? Do you have have an iPhone? Do you have high-speed internet at your local library? And show some sort of indirect or even direct connection to those advancements in society to multiculturalism.
I'm sorry, what? I'm confused.
Things that were partially benefited by multiculturalism, like maybe like technology, that maybe at your local, so you may you wouldn't have to get like a rich dad poor dad argument, but as an American, you have resources available to you, and some things you still might have to purchase. Like you can't, you might maybe. Do you have an iPhone?
No.
But I mean, you're familiar with the iPhone or something like that.
Yeah.
If you look at what is the iPhone beneficial for society? Would you benefit from an iPhone if I could demonstrate that the development of the iPhone was based on research and innovation and structures that were multicultural? So it's not directly, and it's saying like, do you go to your local library? Does your local library have high-speed internet? And do you have available high-speed internet? To you, even different things that indirectly, or even the curriculum by the schools you went to, where the curriculum availability better. I mean, so you want like me to, some Indian guy or Jewish guy just gave you like, a bunch of money for no reason, or something like that. And I can't necessarily, but it's saying that things that have benefited all people that are part of society, that have generally been good for all of society, that have been related or directly caused by multiculturalism. I mean, does it benefit you to have Harvard and MIT in your neighborhood? I'm assuming that,
No, definitely not.
you're saying there's no benefit to you to have Harvard or MIT in your neighborhood?
No, it's a bunch of well, pardon my language, I guess, but it's a bunch of rude, yuppie, degenerate little fucking twinks. Sorry for cursing. To go around and ruin the area and just torture the locals and are rude and I don't know, just pieces of shit, to be honest.
That might be the case. I'm saying, like, if you look at
for normal people, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Well,
for the
what is-
everyday man,
what
for
is
everyone
normal?
around, for the non-yuppie, basically.
I mean, do you believe in upward mobility? Do you ascribe to education? Are you trying to? I'm not saying, like, I don't judge people by wealth and saying whether you're a rich man or poor man. I judge a person more on their deeds or their contribution, and so I don't judge people by the size of their wallet. But in terms of what are your aspirations for life, what do you want to get out of life? What do you want to do with your life? And I think that you will see that a lot of those things that you probably desire to do, that multiculturalism will largely benefit you in those pursuits, not hold you down. And there might be a certain, I'm not saying there's no harms to multiculturalism, might affect the amount of government aid. It might affect crime statistics. I'm not saying there's no detriments to multiculturalism, but you should be aware of the advantages and the ability for you to excel in life that multiculturalism is providing for you.
I don't know about all that, but
I mean, do you do martial arts? Do you do yoga?
no, I don't.
I mean, even if it's not like food or ethnicity, do you speak any other language than English?
No, I don't.
So, I mean, what are your ambitions in life?
To do art and be happy, I guess. I mean, and
art, music, or drawing, or
drawing. I know the drawing I have is pretty shitty as my avatar, but
is your drawing European in background? You don't value?
Oh no, I mean I love.
That's something you drew yourself.
Yes, I mean it's pretty crappy.
It's like a chipmunk smoking a cigar.
It's a hedgehog.
Yeah, and I want to put out the data, but to show that how do you feel that multiculturalism is harming you?
Well, I mean, personally, living I don't live in the city now, but being happy is hard. I see that in the chat. But sorry. I'm sorry. I'm kind of nervous. So no, I'm not a fucking Sonic fan. Stop it.
Yo, you say you make art, right?
Yeah, sure, I draw, yeah.
Draw?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you agree with me, and I've been saying this for a long time, that the alt-right or like the new right needs an artistic movement behind it, like the Italians had futurism during fascism, and that helped legitimize it gave it a cultural backbone that's still respected to this day. No one questions the brilliance of the futurists.
Well, art is part of identity,
right? And I'm saying the alt-right is missing. Like, okay, you have this like kind of.
Well, we have a couple. I mean, artists. I mean, look at for instance, like Murdoch, and Emily Euclid.
I'm talking about really, really serious art.
I'm not a big art guy. I'm a science and math guy generally.
I'm not talking about like Murdoch like being like these interesting cartoons. I'm talking about there's no artistic movement behind the alt-right to like present the worldview in a totally profound way. It's missing. It's missing from the equation.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I think if you're gonna win over the left, which is obviously the goal, is you have to bring people over. There needs to be like a cultural magnet besides a doctrine and ideology.
Well, I don't even know. I'm saying, like, are you trying to win people over to your cause? I mean, what you didn't say what your ambitions is. I'm saying, do you feel like some sort of tribal identity? I mean, you don't have to dox yourself to like your background, but I'm saying you feel like some sort of tribal greater identity to the white people. Are saying that's not even part. You just like your private ambitions.
I mean, I do feel closer to my fellow white people, not as like a meme by saying fellow, but yeah.
You're saying theoretically, or you're saying in practice? I'm saying like you have a handful of friends and they're all white, or you're just saying theoretically you
theoretically.
But in practicality, you're not part of like all white circles.
No, I mean, I barely have any friends.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, because I'm kind of a nerd.
No,
like I don't like I'm more intellectual. I sit here and read and study, and probably I selected to be intellectual because I was never so popular. And so but just theoretically, like you're saying, like this utopian good society is out there, and like you think like if there were a bunch of white people, you would all of a sudden like be popular and have a bunch of friends, or maybe the same issues you're facing now that's not connected.
Oh, I don't think the same issues I'm having now would be connected.
Well, you think that if you were you're in Massachusetts, one of the most multicultural areas in the country, and you think that your life would be different in an ethnically homogenous state, or you would be suffering the same things you're suffering now?
Oh, I think I would be suffering the same things I'm suffering now. I mean, honestly, I don't like being around people very much, but I mean, I just think there's less of a chance, say I go out, of me getting like robbed at gunpoint. And I have, I mean,
well, I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, that could be,
I mean, it wasn't a bunch of, like, to be fair, it was a bunch of white people who held a gun to my face.
I mean, that's part of urban areas, and God forbid, I'm sorry that happened to you. And if you're looking at historical issues between like African Americans or Hispanics and white people versus theoretical multiculturalism. And like, are you in an area like, is there Chinese and Indian people? Or are you saying like you're in a black area?
Oh no, there was also there would also be Chinese and like Koreans and things as well.
But you weren't robbed by a Korean or Chinese person.
No.
Hey, there are plenty of hard Asian gangs. Most of the heroin in New York is done by the triad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I was saying the nature of God forbid the crime in America between blacks and Hispanics and whites is more due to historical conflict. It's pretty rare that a white person gets held up or robbed by an Asian person.
Asian gangs are fucking harsh.
They are.
But in terms of crime statistics, I'm saying obviously there's gangs and violence everywhere, but there's not too much. The crime data shows that they commit less violent crimes, at least certainly to non-Asians. And if there's like a gang type thing where they have an issue, but in terms like I've rarely heard most people, God forbid, they get like robbed. It's probably by a black person or maybe a Hispanic person, and there's certain historical reasons.
Dude, that's racist.
Well, I'm saying that's statistics. I'm saying to judge a person based on it, but I'm saying crimes. The FBI releases crime statistics, and saying like you could pop on the FBI survey of crime statistics, and I'm saying like
Hey, guys, if any of you guys like noise music, my friend just released a tape called "Let Statistics Be the Bigot," and it's a concept album about race realism. It's pretty brilliant. Check it out.
Are you intellectual? What's your? Are you in university?
Who are you talking to, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to college now. Yeah. Well, not now. It's summer, but yeah.
What's your field of interest?
Right now, graphic design, but like I'm not in like sciences or anything like that.
Right? Are you computer literate? Are you good with computers?
Decent.
Yeah, I wish you success. I'm not sure. I mean, have you been following this? Is this the first time you saw me on this debate tonight?
No, I watched your thing on Patrick Little.
On American Pride?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Isn't David remarkable?
So, I mean, have you thought through these issues? You have like a political worldview, or you just kind of have like a natural inclination? You don't like multiculturalism, or are you like inherently a political person who has like thought out, like JF or something, who has a well thought out political worldview?
I don't know. Wait, can you ask the question? I'm sorry.
Do you have a well thought out political worldview, or you just have opinions on specific issues like multiculturalism you don't really like?
Yo, dude, stop being a dick. Come on, you're being condescending, bro.
I'm not being condescending. I'm asking a question. I'm saying he's just a young man and he's starting his education. It's most people haven't had a well thought out worldview. You just have like a collection of opinions on different issues. I'm saying, I haven't said the same thing to Babs. He didn't have a well thought out worldview, and that, like I haven't spoken to you enough to either to say, have you really analyzed and have a system?
Hey, what about Babs' worldview isn't well thought out?
I mean, I'm pretty. I'm pretty understanding of the alt-right view, and I mean, I don't agree with it completely, but I'd say I'm closer to that.
Did you vote for President Trump?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not for instance, is like Zionism, but I did anyway.
Yeah, I don't mind letting your voice.
Hindsight is 2020.
I don't mind your voice being heard, and it's saying like these issues take a lot of research, and you're entitled to your opinion, and you're entitled to your vote, and your worldview, and your actions. And I wanted to put out these ideas, and Massachusetts is a multicultural area, and maybe you'll take advantage of some of the benefits that multiculturalism has to offer you.
Yeah,
in whatever your field of interest, whether it's art or music or computers, no matter what your field of interest is, there's probably benefits in your immediate area that you could derive from multiculturalism. And if it's art, there's probably Chinese, Japanese art, Mexican, Native American, Indian art, and all these different techniques and different ways of understanding the world that you could immediately derive benefit from.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, not really sure. Sorry.
Well, you're not sure.
Kind of being distracted.
I mean, do you know those resources exist? I mean, you could probably just do a Google search, and immediately there's probably clubs, cultural clubs, meetup groups that you could derive benefit from your different cultures that would benefit your own interests. Or you saying ideologically, like it just doesn't interest you? You don't have interest in culture, in different world views, or incorporating different techniques into your own?
No, I mean, of course, I draw inspiration from. I used to be a weeb, and so I've drawn like inspiration from anime and other sorts of
Japanese
material. Yeah, of course. But I mean, not sure.
Really, dude? You were a weeb?
What? Yeah, I mean.
Listen,
no. Oh, you're just being a smart ass. I'm sorry.
Do you have any Japanese friends? Would it improve your life if you had a Japanese friend?
No, I don't, and no.
You don't think that it'd be beneficial for you to have a Japanese friend?
Not really. I mean,
just because you're a loner and don't really like friends, or you're saying like you think you'd be more beneficial to have a white friend than a Japanese friend?
Wouldn't care either way. I mean, not. I mean, I don't. I don't really get along with people all that well in general. So I mean,
because you're struggling with your own internal demons.
What?
I mean, because you have like internal demons that you're struggling with.
I'm not a fucking Sonic fan. Hold on, sorry. Sorry, go on. Sorry.
You're struggling with your own internal demons and like haven't figured out your approach to life or who you are, or are you saying you're just like you by choice a loner?
By choice a loner.
So what difference does it make to you, multiculturalism or not then?
I just think others who've gone through at least the same life path that I did, that they would benefit from a homogenous society.
Do you have any reason or logic or proof behind your postulation?
I mean, I'm sorry, I haven't really thought it through, but
It's all right. I mean, it's good to think about these things, but anything, just have a systematic, coherent worldview. You have to think about these things. And I mean, that's what these streams are for. That's why you put me against JF, so such completely different ways of looking at it. And you could analyze, from both sides to hear, arguments for different ways of life and understanding of how to live in the world.
Yeah.
And even JF would agree to some of the benefit, even though he's not a multiculturalist, he would agree to me that some of the benefits that multiculturalism offers.
Hey, Shivers, where do you stand?
What?
Where do you stand on the 88 stuff? Are you 88?
No, I haven't gone full 88. No.
What do you think? What do you think of Patrick Little?
If I could vote for him, I would have.
What?
If I could vote for him, I would have. And no, I'm not a Sonic fan. Jesus fucking Christ.
Are you a Steven Pinker fan?
What's up with the Sonic thing? Why do people care about Sonic?
Oh,
are you a Steven Pinker fan? I have.
You're all calling me a Sonic fan. Are all Sonic fans like this? That's what they say.
I don't really care about any. I mean, to me, I don't mind you having your hobbies or interests. To me, that I'm more like autistic. You're in the realm of ideas. I'm saying you could start your own stream, or if the guy who calls himself my roommate wants to do a stream on this stuff.
Wait, Doooovid, are you confirmed like Asperger's?
Well, I mean, friendship circle. I know the.
Have you been diagnosed by a doctor as Asperger's?
No, I'm saying I'm not clinically. I don't clinically have any psychological problems, thank God. But I do support friendship circle. We do, and I do know many autistic people who actually have that clinical condition. But I mean, in terms of the way people use it, to me, these conversations is not interesting. I would, if you two want to be friends, I would encourage that. That's good. That's multiculturalism. You could be friend with my roommate, because you share similar interests. But relatively, I don't share those interests with you. I'm not against you. That's part of my multiculturalism. To me, I appreciate your value and uniqueness you bring to society. But no, I mean, we don't share common interests. And I don't see a problem with that. We don't have to share common interests. I mean, I'm sure we share a lot of common interests, but it's just in terms of anime or art or something like that. Relatively, I don't really even care about art in general. Let alone these different. But I'm for you pursuing your pursuits. I'm for you succeeding and enjoying what you do.
Yeah, I mean, well, for instance, one thing I'd have against from what you said in the stream with JF was you'd be interested in acidic Jews and even allowing for instance Muslims to practice Sharia law
in their own neighborhood, to set up our own way of life in America.
Well, wouldn't that basically be legal pedophilia and legal?
No, I mean that's not what I'm saying.
Legal woman abuse.
Well, I mean, saying you have to put a lot of research in this thing. If you're a multiculturalist and you really understand Islam, you verse the xenophobia of people who don't really understand Islam. I'm saying, have you ever went to a local mosque? Have you been to an interfaith? Have you joined your Muslim brothers in your neighborhood for a prayer service, for like an iftar meal or something like that?
Wait, what? I'm sorry.
Have you ever
the last thing you said?
Iftar, is the general events like at the fast after they break their fast on Ramadan, they make big meals afterwards. And a lot of times they have public events. And so you never went to an interfaith, you never went into your mosque, you don't have any Muslim friends?
Oh, I've had Muslim friends growing up, yeah.
You're saying you had problems with them, or they weren't good friends?
Yeah, they were shitheads.
And you were friends with them anyways?
No, once I figured out what kind of people they were, I stop being their friend.
I
Clearly,
mean, just because you were in public school together and like.
no, I was in. They were all rich yuppies, and I was in private school with them.
And saying what you were on scholarship.
No, yeah.
So you benefited from their charity. I mean, saying that the Muslims that you were friends with were presumably paying full tuition, and so their parents were supporting your education.
Oh no, I wasn't on scholarship. Sorry, I misheard you. Sorry. No, I wasn't on scholarship. My parents paid out of pocket.
Okay, right. Okay, right. I thought you said you came from a poor background.
No. I did. I mean, we had to fight the school system and shit. And that's. I mean, I'm not gonna go into all that. Sorry.
You don't have to dox yourself, but yeah, I mean, I think you might show that really that multiculturalism has benefited you. You might be sour for certain reasons, but relatively that you've already eaten of the fruits of the benefit of multiculturalism.
Wait, how would I have? What? How would I have benefited from the fruits if I?
Because you went to a good school that had a good education, and saying there was a multicultural school that provides better educations. Did you have the availability to take like calculus and advanced studies? And it's it was a multicultural school that if you had went to a homogeneously white school, chances are it wouldn't have been such a good school.
I mean, I've gone to a multicultural school where I've been, where basically it was a hierarchy of who can get the shit kicked out of them and who can beat the shit out of someone else. I mean, where when I went to basically an all-white school, it was everyone basically got along. I mean, no one started beating the shit out of each other for no fucking reason, because it was clearly on a race basis.
You're saying those were Muslims, or you're saying those were blacks?
Oh, it was everyone. I mean,
everybody. So it was just violent. Everybody was violent.
Yeah, basically. I mean, it was very clearly sectioned into, whites, Muslims, Koreans, blacks.
You're saying like you're sour because you got beat up by a Muslim?
Well, no, I didn't get beat up.
Or you just, from your experience, that having different people...
From my experience, having a bunch of different people together who...
Maybe just childhood, like, public school kids, people get in a lot of violence. I'm saying in your adult life...
I mean, I've been in public school, with a bunch of, black people, and, I mean, it wasn't anything like that, so...
Yeah, I can't speak to your personal experience. I'm saying you want to share that with the people watching this. I mean, you're just trying to justify your multiculturalism. You're saying you want to give your personal experience is your justification for not liking multiculturalism because you were in a multicultural school and there was a lot of violence.
Yeah, and I see that when I see that's how people.
But was the education quality better at that school than the other school? Despite the violence, your educational
teachers, though, and all the teachers were white.
But the educational opportunity was better at the multicultural school.
Yeah.
Because it was a private school and those people were getting paid.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people paying those white people's salaries were minorities, were immigrants, were different.
They were all like rich socialites from like all the children of rich socialites.
Socialites are like doctors and lawyers. Socialites are doctors. Kids of doctors and engineers, or kids of socialites?
Kids of doctors and socialites and.
Socialites? You're saying socialites? I don't know what you mean. Like socialites?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
You're saying like the mothers, like saying like the breadwinner of the family was a doctor and engineer.
Yeah.
And their wife and kids were socialites, but I'm saying you don't get rich being a socialite. You get rich being like a doctor and engineer or a businessman.
Yeah, like doctors and I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know.
I'm just trying to help you think through it. I'm saying like to have a consistent worldview and really think about your values, and even like I'm doing like a Freudian psychoanalysis of you, where they're helping you like uncover your subconscious and saying like, why do you hate multiculturalism? And it's like Chris Rock, because like in 3rd grade you got beat up by a Muslim.
I didn't get my ass beat by a Muslim.
There's just like a psychoanalysis factor type there that you're saying like, I'm really trying to figure out like why you dislike.
I mean, I was definitely friendly with people, but I had no. I mean.
And then you get burnt or something. You're saying like, no, like now you hate these people, or saying you regret your friendship with those people, or like, no, you wouldn't want to get back in contact and hang out with your Muslim friends.
No, of course not.
Of
course, I wouldn't want to get.
And you're saying it's because they're Muslim. You like look, you think like you think you're better than them, or you're saying it's just your personal choice, or you legitimately think
just
you're
my
better
personal choice. I
but you don't
think I'm better than any of them.
You don't think you're better than those people.
Well, I mean, I think I'm better than those people because those people were fucking terrible, but to everyone. So, I mean, to also to other like white kids and shit. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's how worldviews are made, and like obviously you keep on thinking about these things. This issue, multiculturalism, you will face it your whole life, whether you like it or not. And like demographics might switch a little bit. You might have, like you could vote and have your opinions, or your friends, or you could move to a largely white area, and like just follow it on TV or the news. But I mean, it's a major issue. It's worthy of thinking about, and just thinking for do you hold your opinions because they're well thought out, or are there just historical situations that happened in your past that have caused you to be in that camp, but you haven't really thought out the issue logically and dissected it?
Situations that, I mean, that have proven to me that that multiculturalism is pretty much a pipe dream, and
I'm gonna pipe
I don't know what else to.
A pipe dream
because it doesn't work for normal people. It doesn't work for it doesn't work for everyone. I mean,
it's a pipe dream because God forbid you got mugged by a black guy and got in a few fights and had a bad experience with a few Muslims in high school.
I mean, it wasn't just a few. I mean, it was kids. It was people beating the shit out of each other. I mean, just senselessly. I mean, it was a hierarchy, and if you didn't use your fist, you were low and you were basically a bitch. So I don't, I don't see how it's, personally, I don't see how it's hopeful. So I mean, I agree with it. For instance, with like the alt-right in that regard, because I mean, I just didn't know how to, myself, how to pinpoint the problem.
When you think multiculturalism, you pinpoint it as being the problem, or are you saying there's a lot of problems?
I'm saying there's a lot of problems, but I think multiculturalism is one of them.
Yeah, I'm saying. I probably disagree in saying like even examining your situation, even your diagnosis, that according to God forbid the bad things that happened to you in your childhood, that even you're correct to pinpoint the cause of those problems being multiculturalism. Yeah. And you do support my claims that you did the drive benefit of educational opportunity. That you're actually supporting my claim that your educational opportunity was increased by multiculturalism.
No, I mean, wait, how am I supporting your claim?
Because the education opportunity in your multicultural school was better than in your all-white school. See, there were some problems with multiculturalism and violence or whatever. There were some benefits that you had better educational opportunity in the multicultural school as opposed to the white school. I thought you admitted to that.
Well, I mean, for instance, all the staff and all the teachers that were there were white. I mean, it wasn't because of, I don't think it was because it was a multicultural school that I could
It's because they're
learn.
getting paid, right? I mean, because it was a private school where they probably got paid better than at the other school.
Yeah.
I don't know the details, but I'm saying the fact that the teachers were white doesn't change the fact that they were teaching in a multicultural school. The good teachers were not teaching at the white school; they were teaching at the multicultural school. So you benefited from multiculturalism. You admitted in your own, whatever information you revealed about yourself, that the benefits that I mentioned about educational opportunities is true, even in your own story, that educational opportunities were better in the multicultural environment than in the non-multicultural environment.
I mean, guess so. I don't think I would really say so.
Remember, facts are facts.
I think if the teachers were, I mean, I went to an all-white school with the same kind of teaching style and everything, and learned the same. So after I left there, so I mean, so I wouldn't.
You have to examine it and saying like, okay, like how much can we gain? I mean, obviously you have your situation, anybody if you have to protect your identity or whatever, but I mean, just to examine the situation and show the I'm going to try to give more data on the points that I'm saying, but I mean, from what I'm discussing with you, it seems that you're backing up at least my point that multiculturalism is good for educational opportunity. And saying, yeah, maybe there was some violence connected or you had some bad experiences connected to it, and that's trade-offs people have to consider.
I'm not sure. I don't know. It's interesting, though. I'll leave, though. Thank you for having me.
Okay, good. Nice talking to you. I'm glad you joined in. God bless.
Thank you for having me. I hope not everyone in the chat completely hates me. And thank you for having me on. Bye.
Okay, yeah, take care. Thanks for joining on.
So, Doovid, how the hell does diversity make teachers better? Like, what is your point there? By what mechanism does multiculturalism magically make the schools better?
Well, I don't think magically, but I'm saying that it increases educational output. There's been many studies that show that educational achievement is higher in multicultural schools than homogenous schools, whether it's all black or all white. That the best schools are usually multicultural, and it's like like studying calculus and science opportunity, and so when multicultural, it doesn't necessarily you gotta. And a lot of times, this means like Arabs, Muslims, Indians, Chinese. So those multicultural, we have a whole bunch of people that produce better results. There's more to learn from each other, more friendly or unfriendly competition that causes.
Well, first thing is, I would be skeptical of these studies. I mean, I'd have to look at them. But to me, I mean, if a multicultural school does better, just because it probably has a larger percentage of like East Asians who have a higher average IQ and do better, on academic work.
Well, usually they're mixed. I'm saying so. The Asians factor into the play.
They bring up the average.
Yeah, but saying, I don't know your educational background. I mean, did you take calculus? Did you take physics? Did you take advanced science?
No.
Do you think you'd be better off? I mean, relatively, those are European largely discoveries. And saying like, and like I was showing my, my Newton, most of those people were European. But you don't think you'd be better off, and your life would be better if you had studied those things, or even in the future you study those things?
No, not at all.
You don't think Newton was a great man? His wisdom is worthy of study?
I don't really know much about him. Not particularly something I care about.
I mean, it's likely
the point I wanted to make was we can look at data, and people can look this up. Black schools, majority black school districts get better funding than a lot of white areas, most white areas. And they still do poorer than rural white areas. Like poor like areas in Appalachia, the schools still get higher averages than black schools that are way overfunded.
Yeah, but saying majority black schools by definition not multicultural.
No, but I was making that point that goes towards race, towards the multicultural thing. I mean, I guess you claim there's this data. I would have to look at it, but I would like, do you have a theory or an explanation, a mechanism that would explain why just having a bunch of random different people would produce higher grades? Because that doesn't seem to me like under any worldview something that would make sense.
Yeah, that was Scott Page at University of Michigan. I'll be going over some of his studies at some point either this week or next week that, God willing, that has shown that complexity, where you have different type people produce different results. You're saying that when you have all the same type people together, it for whatever reason hampers creativity into innovation, and having different type peoples together increases creativity. It increases.
I disagree with that. Actually, and I think Alt Hype did a video talking about how diversity kills creativity. Someone can go dig that up and find it if they want.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And
like as someone I've been to diverse schools, it's nothing but ethnic conflict, and it's actually more segregated. Like people just sort of hang out with their own groups in a multiracial school.
Well, that's kind of my point about multiculturalism, where you come together in calculus class or to study the wisdom, and then you might part your own ways and have your own friends.
Black kids don't study. It doesn't matter whether it's an all-black school or a mixed 50-50 school. The black kids don't study no matter what environment they're in.
Well, they may or may not. And it's saying, like, certain of the schools I went to, the black people are there who are very serious and good students. And it's saying, okay, you're just focusing on the blacks, and saying blacks isn't multicultural. Multicultural implies having multiple different peoples, not just whites or blacks. You're talking about.
And I explained that this is a big if multicultural schools have a higher grade point average, it would simply because of the higher numbers of East and Southeast Asians.
Well, I don't think it's just them, but yeah, I mean, that's a big element in the factor.
Well, that would bring up the average.
Yeah, it would bring up the average, but saying you provide excellence, and there's all different type people, and you might have, and that's maybe just related to the demographics of who's coming to America. But there's generic data to show that having different type people together increases output. That it makes people work harder. It makes people produce better results. And I'm not talking about just two groups. I'm talking that's multicultural. Multi implies more than two, like at least three.
Again, I would have to see this because I know you're kind of bad about claiming studies claim things when they don't. Like JF called you on this today. Well, someone in JF's chat basically. You were trying to say that multiracial units were better than monoracial units, and all the study really showed was that military service actually brings people together across cultural lines. It didn't show that multiracial units did better than monoracial units, and you were kind of trying to present that as what your argument. Or at least that's how people in the chat took it.
Well, I mean, the McKinsey study I actually put on Twitter, and that he disagreed with some of the findings, but it was in terms of economic output and for multinational corporations and board of directors of actual profit margins of companies that had more diversity produced larger profit. And so, I mean, that was a McKinsey study. It's pretty authoritative, and he might have drawn different reasons why that was so. The studies.
No, this was about you cited some military study.
Yeah, I didn't post that, and I have to, so I'm going to have to do a presentation and examine this data. The only one I posted was the McKinsey study about business and economic output.
Another factor is multicultural areas tend to be in large cities, so they tend to get better funding.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's not directly correlated to funding because, as you mentioned, it isn't all funding because the white kids in Appalachia with less funding do better than the blacks in the inner cities with more funding. Yeah, I was saying usually the most elite areas in the urban areas are multicultural. So you might have your largely black areas, and white people generally. The poor white people are generally not urban; they're more rural. But your wealthiest districts in most suburban areas are multicultural, and you're right that the majority these days of those high achievers are East Asians.
I would say that wealthier whites, depending on what state, tend to be suburban. I'd say that whites in cities also tend to be poor, like rural whites. At least that's been my experience in California. Wealthy whites live in the suburbs.
Every wealthy white cities. Every wealthy white neighborhood in the suburbs has a few Indian people there, as opposed to Appalachia. I'm not sure that there's Indian people in every in every rural area, but it's saying every suburban wealthy white area has these East Asians and Jews that are in their neighborhoods.
Yeah, I'm not denying that, but my point was you were saying that poor whites were in the rural areas and that wealthy whites were in the cities. And like I said, in California, my experience is it's poor whites in the cities, in the urban areas, and wealthy whites stay in the suburbs.
Yeah, and there are some trends, like in Michigan, obviously, there's farm areas that are largely white that are pretty wealthy, and people have huge estates of like thousands of acres, old family businesses that are relatively wealthy, but rural. And these demographics need more study, you know. But I mean, even you would recognize that there are some benefits. You're obviously you're not a multiculturalist, but
there are absolutely no benefits to multiculturalism.
Well, it's an educational achievement, and that's pretty clear that.
Well, I didn't concede that because I would have to see the data.
Innovation.
But again, that could just simply, like I said, that could just be the Asians. The Asians being there could be bringing the grade points up to make a difference.
Development of technology, Google, all these companies are largely multicultural. The ones that are pushing forward.
That's affirmative action that creates that. If you took affirmative action, they would be overwhelmingly just white and East Asian. And you can talk.
Affirmative action only usually benefits specific minorities. Like affirmative action usually is negative towards Asians. I mean,
yeah, I said if you took affirmative action out of it, all these companies, these tech companies would be white and East Asian and maybe some South Asians. Affirmative action brings in all these other groups of people, and you can talk to people that work in the tech industry on the Daily Show. They talk about it all the time because they have guys in the tech industry. Everyone knows like coders, like that's a white guy thing. All these other people, they're hired to do like make work jobs that don't mean anything to get these fucking bullshit tax write-offs.
Yeah, but there's multiple parts to the piece. I mean, so multiculturalism you have on your higher end and your lower end, and that's why I was arguing theoretically as in terms of policy. I didn't want to connect multiculturalism to immigration because you could be pro-multicultural but anti-immigration, or you could be pro-multicultural in different ways. And just what I meant about white people, when you combine different white people together, that's already a form of multiculturalism. Just the definition of white is a multicultural term because you're bringing people of different cultures together.
Not really. I mean, at this point, there's been a total ethnogenesis where I would say most white Americans are just generic white Americans. They aren't Scottish. They aren't Irish. They aren't anything.
Because of multiculturalism, because America was always multicultural, at least in the terms.
You're confusing multiculturalism with monoculturalism. It's a common trick people like to do, or maybe you actually don't understand the difference. But when you bring a bunch of people together and impose on them a single culture, it goes from being multiculturalism to monoculturalism.
Yeah, multi means three or more. So once you have, Germans,
and
French,
mono is when it's one. And if you take a bunch of people that came from different groups and assimilate them into one culture, it becomes a monoculture.
Yeah, and that's to some extent.
Doowovid. What do you think of Doowovid? What do you think of multiracialism versus multiculturalism? Do you see them as the same?
Well, I mean, because these terms are without getting into argument about terms. Yeah, I support multiracialism, multiculturalism,
Gotcha.
multi-ethnicities.
How about
Jews, Muslims, Jains,
how about
blacks, white, Hispanics, Chinese, different cultures. I like all of the above.
How about multiracialism but monoculturalism? What do you think of that?
I don't know. I'm anti-monoculturalism. I don't like assimilation. I think assimilation is largely a failure that because I believe in somewhat racial realized.
How do you say there's two competing cultures then in this multicultural society, and they despise each other, they want to kill each other. How does a multicultural regime mediate that if these groups are bent on destroying each other?
Well, I'm saying law and order has to be a solution. Multiculturalism doesn't.
Yeah, but they're sharing the same government. That's imagine you have two people living in one house, and they want to kill each other.
You were saying that's law and order.
No, but you're missing my point. They're both the law. So the law is serving two interests at the same. That's not feasible.
What if it's Hatfields? What was that, Norman? Hatfields in something? You're saying they don't have to. I'm saying they don't have to. You don't have to have different races or multiculturalism for that to be a problem. That's just a question of law and order. Hatfields and McCoys were both Scots or whatever.
So say you have Group X's police force, and you have Group Y's police force. So they're both serving the law, but they also want to kill each other. So you have two armed groups that are ostensibly under the same regime. No, they're the law enforcement. No, they're the law.
So that's law and order still, because that's corruption.
Well, Doovid, we have to take the world as is. In a multicultural, multiracial society, you're going to get more corruption.
So generally, like in here, if you go to Dearborn, you're going to have Muslim cops. If you go, to the Detroit, you're going to have a lot of African American. My neighborhood, like you have a lot of African American cops. That, so I mean, there is going to be some element of that in American system. The trial by jury is also a factor in that. So that would probably favor the areas. I mean, if you went to the Muslim part of town, and
why do you think that juries generally vote along racial lines?
Well, in the American system, part of multiculturalism, or the American system in general, protects trial by jury. So when you had the multiculturalism where it was just French, Spanish, German, and Anglo people and Jews or whatever.
Hold on. What the hell is Norvin doing on a Jew stream? Norvin, I thought you swore
That's a great question.
streams.
Norvin's the most popular guy in my channel.
Yeah, I know, but why did he
protects me from
I saw Doovid telling this kid that Muslims made him smart. I mean, that's basically an exaggeration of his argument, but that's basically what he was saying. Was that being Muslim kids made him smart?
Wait 1 second here. Is there a Ricardo on? I got Ricardo here. Are you on? Do you want to say something?
I'm okay for now, Doovid.
Okay.
So hold on.
Okay.
He's my friend.
So Norvin, you felt so compelled to come on you broke your Jew stream exile for that?
Brundlefly, can you go away, please?
Nah.
You just came to cause trouble.
You guys should resolve that that beef that you have.
I mean, really, in the same way, like me and Brundle rose to fame together, debating each other.
Oh, Scott.
It was actually Norvin, the first person I debated. Until today, I'm not sure who's. I think Norvin's.
Dude, you introduced us to Norvin. We wouldn't know about Norvin.
Yeah, I think Norvin's more popular on my channel than even Brundle. But and I don't mind having a diversity of opinions. That's part of the multiculturalism. Like I support the diversity of opinions, and to really get to the crux of the issue, to examine the facts and see how it's affecting different people. So I mean, the guy who came on earlier. He was trying to dissect, like, had multiculturalism really wronged him, saying he got in a few fights in high school with Muslims or something like that. But, is he really making an argument against multiculturalism? So.
Yeah.
Anything relatively, whatever Jewish strategy that, I don't even know. I'm saying that people have to have a coherent worldview, or they could just take issues, or they have a feel towards an issue, or maybe they've examined it. And Norvin's actually done quite a bit of research. He might even be an expert on a lot of these topics. And obviously we take we're in disagreement, but like I told JF that it's most interesting to, even personal or for the audience, to have people who are on complete opposite sides of the issue to argue about it. So why like JF, I mean, why Halsey versus Eke wasn't that interesting, because there wasn't that many points of contention.
Yeah.
I don't know why they called that debate a bloodbath. It's pretty interesting.
Just fake hype or something like that.
Hey, I missed. I didn't hear much of the debate, or any of the debate between Babs and Doovid. What were you guys talking about earlier? It must have been interesting.
I don't think Babs said anything the whole night. I mean, on this channel.
Yeah.
Oh, he didn't. Oh, okay.
I haven't been saying anything tonight. I was just commenting in the chat and watching your appearance on the show.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
I can't. Wait, someone talking. I think someone named Josh joined the call.
I put the link in the chat. Like, I don't mind if you was this Josh McInnes, yeah, he's been messaging me on the whole night. I appreciate you joining. Did you want to chime in as your...
I just wanted to say, it seems like multiculturalism, in schools at least, is only a problem in the States. Here in Canada, I went to three very multicultural schools and had zero problems.
It's interesting that guy Farhad on Luke Ford was mentioning the Canadian culture, like he had been in England and the US, and he mentioned that like in Canada, like violence is very small. Like in England, there like even there's a lot of violence, and a lot of people will stand their ground. And he said in Canada, like you just don't get into fights because people are like, what are you fighting for? Like, why are you being ridiculous? And also the demographics in Canada is much different. So obviously in the US, there's a lot of Mexicans and a lot of African Americans of a substantial amount, over 10% of the population. And in Canada, I don't think that even like African Americans are necessarily more than Asians or anything like that.
Actually, let me ask Josh. Josh, you're in Canada, right? Are you in Eastern or Western Canada? If that's not too revealing. You're where?
West Coast.
West. Okay. Oh, that's where all the Chinese people are, right? So like, what's it like being flooded by China?
I mean, JF mentioned Canada is more multicultural than America in that terms. I mean, the white population might be a little bit more percent, but in terms of policy, Canada.
So Josh, what's your take on that?
On what?
On my question, like, is it really bad as far as
in Vancouver? It's definitely very Asian, but where I live, there's almost none.
Are there intense Asian gangs in Vancouver, like the triads and stuff?
Oh, I'm sure there's gangs of every ethnicity there. The whole place is a mess.
Yeah, the triads are pretty fucking harsh. They run most of the heroin in like the East and West Coast, I think. Well, I mean, like none of these cartels, but for a lot, like when I went to high school, it was all the Asian gangs that like ran all the drugs into the school, actually.
Yeah, Josh, do you think that anything nefarious is being planned? Because there's a lot of Chinese people where I live too, in California. Like, do you think that something nefarious is being planned by them, or are they just kind of here for work?
Well, Trudeau did just sell Norsat, who developed all of the Canadian and U.S. military satellite technology. He sold it to the Chinese with like zero background checks. So, yeah.
So, oh wow. That's crazy.
And there's a bunch of problems with Chinese businessmen investing in government projects, and they're basically zero-risk projects, so they make like multi-billion-dollar investments, and if it fails, it's all backed by the Canadian taxpayer, and they don't have to pay shit if it fails.
Yeah, that sounds horrible. I've heard that Trudeau is like a total sellout.
Oh yeah, he's awful.
To the Chinese.
Was there Trump Towers where you were at? I know that the Trump Towers there had like mostly Chinese investors.
I'm not sure.
There might be Toronto or
Do you think that all of Canada is going to fall to China eventually?
Maybe BC. I kind of hope they take over.
Yeah.
I looked at the demographics because Jews in Canada go back basically to the founding of Canada. That there's been Jews there since the beginning, although demographically, like after World War II, you get up to like 200,000. Maybe there's like 10,000 Jews going back 150 years, and only a handful by the founding. And then the Jewish community since like the 80s has been in the high 300,000s. And but in the 60s, I think the Jews were the third biggest minority in Canada, and behind whites, and then the Native Americans. Jews at a few 100,000 were the third biggest minority in Canada. Now the Chinese, the Indians, the blacks, the Hispanic, I think there's all over 1 million in Canada. Relatively, so the Jews have remained stable at about 400,000, maybe increased from like 350 to 390,000 over the last 40 years. But the Chinese, Indians, blacks, and Hispanics have all went from like 200,000 to over 1 million.
Hey, Josh, what's your take on like the alt-right in politics and Jews and stuff?
Oh, I think it's absolutely retarded, and I don't identify as white. I identify as English and Scottish, and I don't care.
Oh, so you're not. you're not an ethno-nationalist or anything?
No.
Are you liberal or conservative or what?
I'm just waiting for the AI robots to take over, and then all the politics don't really matter. Just trying to make it till then. That's pretty much all I care about.
What do you think multiculturalism benefits you?
Are you like
think
multiculturalism?
I think it's a great thing, but I'm a little iffy on immigration. I think multiculturalism works fine in if people stay in their own nations, but I also have no problem with them coming here if they're being productive. And I actually enjoy it. I think it's
so like, what about like the case of the Chinese, where they're basically like a satellite of China in Canada rather than, Canadians? Like, you don't see that?
Yeah, there's in Vancouver you can find street signs in pretty much like.
Isn't that conquest? Like, how is that not conquest, or how do you not see that as conquest?
I don't. Well, most of those people are escaping communism and taking all their wealth here, so it really benefits our economy. It is pushing out like a lot of people that used to live in Vancouver, but then they just
does it really benefit the economy though? Because like
they bring
how do what natives are benefiting? Like from having all these immigrants.
Well, if you look at Vancouver, it's just a giant pile of money, and that's all from China. And
right, so it's a lot of money. Yeah, no, I get that it's a lot of money, but like, what are the natives like seeing that money? Like what?
It's a giant pile of AIDS and heroin too.
No, even if they didn't bring, I just mean like in principle, like it's getting conquered.
They're bringing
like
money,
if we can get conquered by space aliens that have a lot of wealth, that doesn't mean like it's pleasant to be conquered by space aliens.
But they also bring business, and that business includes everyone else in the province and the country, and they bring their technology.
So you're fine with conquest as long as like, it keeps people employed?
Conquest.
Well, how is it distinguishable from conquest? The street signs are changing to a different language.
From us, they're giving to us.
Well, they're taking space, aren't they? Because now, like, you can't.
They're taking houses.
Well, for instance, I grew up wanting to live in San Francisco, but the city has been completely taken over by a lot of American natives, but also a lot of Chinese and Indians, like foreign nationals who can afford these really high cost apartments, and they've just crowded the fucking city, and like now it's not really inhabitable to people who are not.
I know, just like trying to pay the taxes, so, like, would be crazy for the average white guy, right?
Yeah, but why are the taxes? The taxes don't have to be that high. Like to manage like basic,
they are, right? Because that's just taxing all the foreigners, and that money goes to me.
Does it really? Like what? How is it going to you? Is it like just a direct line from their bank account to yours?
I have amazing schooling. Everything around here is amazing. We have like zero crime. Great.
Well, that's fine. If you're fine, I'm not Canadian, so if you're fine with that,
I think multiculturalism is only a problem in America, and I think that's it's a cultural thing.
Well, it's also connected to the historic disputes between whites and blacks in America, and
it's a problem in Sweden
and Hispanics.
Germany.
I mean, because there was the American-Mexican Wars and slavery, so that's bad karma that still affects us today, and Canada doesn't suffer that bad karma.
Yeah, we don't have that with blacks and Hispanics, but we have that times 10 with the natives here, and things are like. I've dated quite a few native chicks. I've had a lot of native friends, and like we get along great now. We've done way worse shit to them.
Hey Josh, are you fine with the presence of the Chinese because you like dating Chinese girls? And it's okay.
I wish I could. But there's none around me, so.
I'm just kidding.
You don't even feel like you have a foot to stand on to hold that these people don't belong in your country, or you think that they're benefiting it and it's only because they're benefiting, or like philosophically you're just like, these guys are ridiculous.
Yeah,
like,
Josh, in principle,
who are these people standing up and telling other people they don't belong?
Yeah,
well, like
Josh, in principle, like the world doesn't need to have borders for your worldview to be realized, right? Like if everyone was just as well behaved as the Chinese, like you wouldn't need borders in a world like that from your point of view, right?
Well,
the Chinese aren't very well behaved in Africa or like Mongolia.
Well, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Our borders are a little fucked in Canada. You can just walk across any part of the border that's not quote unquote an official point of or port of entry, and you can get immediate like refugee status pretty much. So
what's the point of a country like
borders. I wish we did.
Mm.
Just to keep out the Muzzies, just saying.
I'm getting bored with my own stream. I'm not sure like there's any direction to this conversation or whatever, but like even my own stream is boring me. It's kind of sad.
What do you want to talk about? Come on, give us some hard statistics, some facts, some data.
Yeah. I have to research it, but it's just these like, you know.
Oh, dude, no, I have a good question. What do you think of the black Israelite? What are they called?
I wanted to separate myself from like the Lucasphere of like interviews, and I even conduct interviews and like, you know, why people have developed their opinions, and in generally I'm not an opinion type guy. Like it doesn't matter your opinion on these issues.
You're not an opinion type guy.
Hey, wait, I have a top.
I discussed that. I discussed that the other night. But yeah, I mean, generally, I don't care what people's opinions are. You know, like opinions are basically a waste of time and are unbeneficial.
Are opinions degenerate?
Well, I don't know. I'm not opposed to like, you know, generally I'm a live and let live guy, and it's like you have the Lucasphere for that type stuff where people just like, you know, give their opinions all day and just interviewing. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And it's like, I don't care what you think about that. Like, what does it matter what you think about that? Why should I care?
Well, what do we care about what you think about stuff? We listen to it all the time.
Well, I mean, you listen to it out of your own volition. You don't have to listen to me. And it's like I'm more academic about it. That like I'll research and report and you know, I spent tens of hours of research before I went on JF onto the issue, and you know, did my homework in the type sense. And you guys didn't have to listen. That's why I put my stuff out on YouTube, is the sense, you know, try to create some sort of community of people who have similar interests. It's like obviously you got the Lucasphere, the different shows that are more in tune for, you know, like opinion forums and just you know, small talk or gossip or whatever. But I'm more, you know, like intellectual and saying like you should do your homework before you speak. I don't mind. You know, I did a post show, you know, relative after this to just get voice opinions of what people thought about it. I mean, generally, like,
dude, we're talking about our opinions on opinions. Like this is peak boredom right here.
Hey,
let's talk about.
Hey, Doovid, I just want to. And your guys on the panel's opinion, how did he do on JF? I missed it. I had some obligation for the friend.
I can't stand watching JF, but I actually stayed around for, I think, the most part of it. I think you did really good, but yeah, I just hate JF, so I like seeing someone that can actually stand up to him.
Why do you hate JF?
Because I hate his uneducated opinions.
He's educated, but I mean, he's not expert. Like, and I kind of noticed that with him talking like frame games, because it's like a lot of what frame games knows, like I'm very familiar with, and it's kind of like, you know, listening, like you don't know that stuff. Obviously, he's educated. He has areas of expertise. He's got a PhD. He's published multiple papers on genetic research.
Yeah, it's mostly just the way he argues is just the semantic arguments, just running around in circles, trying to find new ways to use words to reframe the argument, and no facts, no statistics, and it really bugs me.
I feel like people always say that about someone they disagree with. Not that I disagree with. Not that I do agree with a lot of what JF says. I disagree, but
to some extent, he's much better than most people on the internet. I mean, compared to Andy Worski, he was much more intellectual and better in that matter. And yeah, I mean, but relatively to like higher intellectual stuff, it could be higher content, and you know, that's less interesting. I mention that all the time. Like I watch Brookings Institute and all the university pages that get very few views because it's just purely intellectual. And you know, if I stream on this later this week, it's just going to be a presentation of facts, and there's really very little to discuss there, because like, you know, if you did your homework or if you have some expertise on the subject, you might be able to add to it. But generally, you know, that's the nature of intellectualism, that most people aren't intellectuals. Most people don't like doing research. Most people have a hard time understanding or getting the value out of data, and you need background and training to properly understand this stuff. Yes, the JF did a service like for his he put the video for like how to be professional on YouTube, and he has a background in music production and a little bit of computer programming. And I'm trying to do that also, to put out a few videos that are upping the intellectual content of these debates and trying to get at what are the facts, what do we know.
I have an interesting topic actually that one of the panelists might have something to say about. It's anarcho-primitivism. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, like the Kaczynski philosophy.
I don't really care about that.
Why not?
I mean, because life is short. There's so much to know. I'm saying, like, yeah, there's a lot of interesting topics, but I mean, I wanted like a post-debate show on what we talked about JF, for people bringing insight about multiculturalism, not like just like a Lucas Spear or like Brundlecast, where it's just a bunch of people, or like Babs, where I'm basically, I have to have purpose, like I need purpose and direction and order and structure, and that that's my demeanor in. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of interesting things out there, but like, no, I mean, I'm not. I appreciate people coming on.
This is not
talking.
freeform.
Well, there was one point that I wanted to bring up on the main topic. Why is it that whenever the IQ of a certain group is lower than the average white IQ, it's a big deal and it's a problem. But as soon as it's higher, it doesn't matter anymore.
I'm saying why for?
Well, we'll say like
a Seinfeld, like a Seinfeld type generic observation about society, because I'm not really familiar. You're talking within like certain circles where people really care about. But yeah, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
So with the alt-right, whenever they talk about like schooling, they'll complain that blacks or Hispanics have a lower IQ and they shouldn't be there, basically. They say they shouldn't be let in through diversity quotas and whatnot. But as soon as it comes to Jews or East Asians, they also have a problem with them because they have a higher IQ. And it's just, I don't get how IQ matters if, like,
I think
the only IQ they're happy with is if it's their IQ.
Well, that's why I mentioned having a coherent worldview and well thought out system to, because people haven't really thought out their ideas or their systems, and someone like you could just listen and pick through. Is like, you don't have a coherent worldview. There's so many anomalies and inconsistencies in what you're talking about. And, I tried at length during the debate in this post show to separate, multiculturalism with different diversity, immigration issues. And, multiculturalism, by definition is like three or more. And like we're talking about with Canada, the specific history of Mexicans and blacks in America that Canada is largely free from. And I mean it's complicated, but if you're just pointing out that like people are stupid.
Regarding Josh's point, I think that the native.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Unfortunately,
I think natives are upset when their institutions are occupied by non-natives. So, with regard to like, the Chinese like filling up American universities, it's not the fact that I think that people would recognize that they're there because of their merit, but.
You're talking about residual benefit of empire, basically. I think that's what you're getting at, Josh. Is that you're saying, as someone who's been here for multiple generations or feels that you have a stronger claim to the residual benefit of the empire, that you're in direct competition when these other people benefit from the residual value of the empire. Now they're coming in and they're sharing the benefit of the empire, and that means there's less to go around, and as opposed to high IQ people, if that's how you want to say it, that generally add to the benefit of the empire and increase the ability and increase your value. So if you have a share in the the U.S. or Canada, you're a full citizen, you have history here. When those people add benefit to your society, that benefits you, as opposed to when people take from the system that detracts from you. So I mean, it's pretty simple why people make those observations.
Well, I generally agree with that, but the thing that I don't get is, say you had a black family that's been in the U.S. for hundreds of years, longer than most white families. A white family that's recently immigrated, say 2 generations ago, they'll feel like they have more of a claim to being American than.
And that's largely
Black
false. I mean, largely that's false, and you have to get to the root of it and saying. So you have people like Richard Spencer, or Jared Taylor, who know their history, they've studied, and they know the integral connection of blacks in America, and that we can't wipe our hands clean of the mistakes of our forefathers, and so it's generally just greed when you think like.
What do you mean we? Like who?
Well, I was saying that
we can't wipe our hands clean. Like what?
Well, I was saying you're not included in a we. I'm saying you're an immigrant.
No, I know that, but I just mean like people make the collective blame argument all the time, and it's kind of.
But I was saying that the blacks have a claim on the residual value of empire more so than you.
Do they though? Like what did they experience? Like what slavery have they ever endured? They get so many benefits, especially where I live. Like they get so many fucking benefits. Like it's a good thing to be.
Yeah,
like,
but saying
105 IQ and black.
They have a claim on the residual value of the American empire more than you. Saying you're just a
why?
You're a first generation immigrant.
Yeah.
Or a second generation immigrant. Either way, it's saying you don't have a claim on the residual value of the empire. You're here. You have to prove yourself. You have to increase to the value of the empire. And if you don't, people could get out of here. Would you?
My dad has probably paid like 5 times the average taxes of any black person in America. Like.
Well, you might, but it's saying that's the thing that expected.
So you have a claim to what you.
You have to increase the value to the empire, as opposed to the blacks who've been in America since the founding, since before the country, intrinsically have a claim on the value of the empire, even if they haven't personally added to it. And it's saying, yes, so when you came to America, that's the karma of America, and you're going to have to pay for that. You say, okay, you didn't make those
So it's just my dad's job to just pay taxes to give like welfare to a bunch of black people all the time because of slavery. Just
yeah, it's like if you go into Israel and you have to support mandatory military service or something like that. It's like I don't have any problem with Palestinians. Like I don't like that's just nonsense. I didn't have anything to do with that. And it's like no, when you go into a new country, you accept their karma and have to look through the whole totality of the history. So yes, when you came to America, you knew that history. You knew. Or if you didn't, you should have looked into it, and you accepted that. And yeah, I mean, your dad's gonna have to pay for it his whole life, and you're gonna have to pay for it your whole life, and there's probably nothing you can do about it.
Well, can I just end the programs? Like, what? Couldn't he just end the program? Like just end like welfare and stuff?
Okay, why do you feel
you could try at the ballot box in politics and saying that's why we're having these discussions.
Well, they do reproduce very quickly. Or you have a point.
Well, they have a greater claim on America than you because you're an immigrant, and you're saying your status here is much more in question than.
Hold on. So Doowovid, you're saying that there is some value to roots. They've been here longer, so they have a stronger claim. Interesting. I wouldn't think that you would make that argument based on your previous.
Well, of course I would.
Previous claims.
Okay.
So there is.
And it's saying relatively African Americans have relatively just as much of a claim on America as whites.
I thought we all had equal claims, regardless of background.
Well, I mean, you have to establish your definitions and terms, and saying if you don't give any value to history, but I'm saying that they're saying, I tried to cover this partially with JF about Europeans being native to Europe, and everybody's status here in America isn't like so you have your blood and soil, and like the Native American says, my land is where my ancestors are buried. And so to say, African Americans, their ancestors have been buried here for many, many generations. How many generations of buried ancestors do you have in this land?
0.
So I mean, you try to invalidate that as having value.
So claim is proportional to number of generations of ancestors buried. Okay.
These things are complicated. There's multiple factors that go into the equation.
No, that's what you just said, though.
Yeah, I said factors into the equation. I didn't say that that's the only factor.
So
obviously, there's a
by that logic, someone whose family has been here for hundreds of years has a stronger claim to the country than like a Chinese national.
To the residual value of empire in terms of government benefits, welfare. It's an empire. We have a lot of wealth. We control a lot of resources, and there's a lot.
Which is it, dude? Which is it? Is it an equal claim to the whole world, or is it number of generations buried?
What do you mean, equal claim to the whole world?
Like, does the whole world have an equal claim, or are the strongest claims entertained of those who have the most generations of family buried here?
there's multiple factors. I'm saying that means we're not going to decipher and like wait it out, but it's going to be like differential equation where you have could be thousands and thousands of factors that play into the equation, and you got to determine how you want to weight them. And different people will prescribe different weights to these things.
So Levi, isn't this counter to your point about the Chinese coming here with all their money and buying up all the land? If they're contributing, but they're just recent, like, what do you weigh more?
Well, they got to buy their way in.
It is. I mean, and to be honest, like, I don't. My main point.
Levi's dad.
To say, the funny thing is, I actually agree with Doowovid. The longer your family has been somewhere, the greater the claim that you have to it. Hence why. So I think the obligations of the people who have the strongest lineage attached to a land supersede the priorities of any other group. Hence, even if your country is better off like bringing in a bunch of like 128 Chinese people, and your IQ is only like 115, like you should still be given a spot at the university, even though their IQ is higher.
Yeah, so that only specifically applies to Mexicans and blacks, and saying obviously, the situation with Mexicans and Americas, like Israel-Palestine, we had wars over these borders many times, and still disputed till today. I see in the chat this guy saying whites have a higher claim to this country, considering we're the ones who pioneered this country. That might still be so, but I mean certainly just lineage factors some claim into it. And then you're saying whites in general, meaning your specific lineage, like you're saying your lineage and what your ancestors did, or just a white person is generally going to claim a benefit because they're white without actually showing what their specific ancestors did.
I don't think that's the gripe, though. The gripe is that, like, this person who has never, who's basically just, like, sucking America dry by just, like, coming to the university and utilizing America's resources. Like, yeah, sure, like, they pay taxes, but their loyalty is ultimately to like, China or wherever else they come from.
Yeah, so, I mean, generally, that's what I said. The immigrants to America are held to a higher standard. There's a special, and then I went over these statistics with Brundle and the, where people are coming from and different nations and how we look, like if we support merit-based immigration or this, you want to have, a few people coming from every single nation, regardless of what they bring to the table. And generally the U.S. now has, just everybody coming from everywhere and, no real consideration to what they bring to the table. Canada, I don't know if Canada's a little bit more selective to that. And when you have larger populations coming, it's largely, you got to buy your way in, or you got to do something, you got to bring something to the table. And if it seems pretty straightforward that's how it works. And, so immigrants coming from Europe and saying that you have a lesser status, you might be white, you might come from Europe, but when you enter America, you actually have a lesser status than your African Americans in larger American society in terms of the way the government operates. And
Josh, what do you think of that?
To me, that makes sense. I mean, just because someone's European, what did they ever do for America? So when they come here to America, the fact is the blacks do have a higher status. They have more connection to the land and shared history.
Gotcha. So it's true for blacks, but not for whites, I guess.
Well, I mean, it's true for whites also, but I was saying, like, when people say, "Oh, whites build up America," does that mean you? Does that mean your ancestors? Like, have you examined your history? Are you taking credit for the claim of somebody else? Right. And why can't a black person say, like, "Oh, like I'm American"?
Well, I don't know what blacks have built up, but you're probably
saying what have whites built up? I mean, you're saying, are you making a credible claim that your ancestors actually did something, and if they did,
I think my dad has probably contributed more than like the average black, like by like 5 times.
I'm not a big reparations guy, but they did do a lot of work with very little pay.
Yeah, I mean, whatever they didn't. Maybe their grandparents did, but
in the debate tonight, I made
the cost that they've imposed through like jailing them and like having to feed them their whole lives, like it's probably like 20 times greater than like whatever economic contribution they made from slavery.
Yeah, but if you educate those people and they stay in America,
they have IQs of like 85, so you can't educate them. But I guess you could like, I don't know, maybe like breed the smartest ones, but you can't just educate people who have 85 IQs.
But you can.
No. Statistically, you can't. It's been attempted. It's actually been attempted for like the past 50 years. Like, billions of dollars have been.
If you compare your IQ to someone 100 years ago with the exact same genetics, you would score way higher.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
It's not, okay. IQ is a function of genetics, environment, and education. Primarily education.
Dude, I'm really sorry. You'll have to repeat that one last time. I'm
okay, so basically, if you compared your IQ now, today, to your ancestors 100, 200 years ago, you would score exponentially higher than they would.
Yeah, so is the test the same, though, or is it, I mean, you're acting as if it's like a fixed...
That's because of educational standards increasing over time. So you can educate people with, say, an 80 IQ, wherever you're getting that from, and you can raise them to 95.
Here's the thing, like, we're getting to a point now where we can actually identify individual genes that are responsible for intelligence, and we're finding that they don't exist in the same frequency in all groups, so...
Yeah, that's right, but it doesn't mean that all white people are...
I never said that.
Oh shit, I have an ad or some shit. Oh, sorry about that.
Okay, I'm thinking about wrapping this up. I'm not sure if you got like closing comments or anything anyone wants to say.
Yeah, I actually do have to get going. Sorry, I was kind of distracted for the last like 5 minutes, but I'm going to get going. But thanks for having me on, Doowovid.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Bye.
Yeah, I'm like half dead, but thanks for having me on.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate you coming to my channel and joining Josh, and maybe we'll talk some more. Anyone else there? Any final comments, anything? Okay, looks like I think I'm gonna end this. Yes, I'm more like research. I like people to do my homework, and I appreciate Exxon and I mean we could continue this further and say your intentions, and even if they did intend that, it's a separate issue from multiculturalism. Even the intentions of the founders and relatively America was multicultural, at least in that respect of white Europeans by definition is multicultural because you're including multiple different ethnicities, and we try to go over that more and how to understand that, and increasing that to the universal brotherhood of man, where once you already have a few cultures together, that same process could be expanded to include the whole universal brotherhood of man. Okay, yeah, I appreciate people who join. Exxon, thanks for your comments. I didn't read through all of them. I'll try to read through these tomorrow, and I'm going to try to make my response video. And people know my content, and I appreciate people listening to me. And minimally, as I said, like if I taught you how speed reading, the benefit of speed reading, or anything, hopefully they'll benefit you. And and keep on increasing the intellectual outcome and thinking about these issues, and try to chart a path forward. So blessings. I'm gonna sign off. Shalom. And bye. See. I'm not sure when the next time I'm going to stream. If how long it takes me to research my response to this debate, it might be a few days. And besides that, I don't have any direct plan for another stream. Maybe I'll do another Ask the Rabbi. I'm not sure if I have anything to present specifically, but if there's demand, to talk about my areas of expertise, because I generally am more autistic. I like to talk about things I know about or research. So, I'll research something, and obviously, like Ask the Rabbi, that's something I've been studying my whole adult life. From Judaism, I've been studying that for 20 years. So I could probably just wing Ask the Rabbi if there's actually interest and people have that to discuss. I'm not like Exxon. I'm a civil engineer by training, and theologian, and I like these topics. I'm not an expert in American history, although I'm relatively well informed. You know, like the great courses. I'm constantly listening. I even listened to the overview of Benjamin Franklin's biography. He's very interesting in these topics. And I had that book on Islam and Thomas Jefferson, and they had thought about these issues. And I was saying there is a lot of thought about that America, that they had considered whether they wanted Muslims in America. You know, Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin had read the Quran. They had read Bhagavad Gita, you know, the Hindu scripture Bhagavad Gita, and there was internal publications among the founding fathers trying to decipher, you know, these different cultures. And so multiculturalism is not a new idea, and the founding fathers definitely had considered allowing these people in and even inviting them in. You know, so it's a topic that requires further research. And if you have expertise in the subject, I'm more than willing, you know, to happy to. I mean, if you even want to pop on, I'll stay on, and I'll put the link in the chat. But I'm saying if someone has expertise, I don't like kind of like pointless banting or people just like, what's your opinion on this issue? I prefer more people who've done their research and have expertise. But I'm saying, yeah, if you want to pop on and give some, you know, history lessons on American history, there's still 15 people watching. I'm willing to let you do that. Otherwise, you know, like I think I basically said it. I don't have anything more to add to this conversation. And, you know, just to have random people giving their thoughts on multiculturalism. I don't know if that, you know, like saying, you know, I don't like to waste my time. I don't like to waste other people's time. But I do see the benefit in these conversations and trying to move forward and come to consensus and thinking them out. And you know, the blood sports, the debates, saying, you know, the best people to discuss these things with is generally the people you disagree with the most. So it doesn't look like anyone else is coming on. So I'm going to close it down. Sorry for my low energy. You know, it's late, and I got a lot on my head, a lot of, you know, like my own life and my own personal things I have to get ahead with, you know, let alone trying to research and you know, present something for people that's worth their time in terms of adding to this debate. And I hope to be able to do more of that. So blessings, everyone. You know, shalom, namaste, Hare Krishna. Thank you.